Ollantaytambo, Peru. With all that science knows and with all the chest pounding that the Incas say that they're the ones who did this, the Spanish, when they were over here in the 1500s, says either it was magic or giants that constructed these megalithic structures. Just take a look at the size of these. These 6 stones, okay, they were thrown off the other side of the mountain when they were quarried and they dragged them across the valley. I get that. But the thing that amazes me the most when I was there is in order to get them up from the valley, they had to drag them up 45 degrees, 300 feet. Ollantaytambo, Peru. With all that science knows and with all the chest pounding that the Incas say that they're the ones who did this, The Spanish, when they were over here in the 1500s, says either it was magic or giants that constructed these megalithic structures. Just take a look at the size of these. These 6 stones, okay, they were thrown off the other side of the mountain when they were quarried, and they dragged them across the valley. I get that. But the thing that amazes me the most when I was there is in order to get them up from the valley, they had to drag them up 45 degrees, 300 feet.
Hello everybody, I'm Chris Silvius. Welcome to another edition of the Aftershow. Talking about ancient advanced technology. Man, should have cleared this thing up before I started this. This is my gig right here. But anyways, some books that we'll cover. This is Life Magazine, Ancient American Civilizations. We'll look at that. Look at Secret of the Ica Stones and Nazca Lines with Dennis Swift. This is one by Robert Temple, The Crystal Sun, Rediscovering a Lost Technology of the Ancient World, basically ancient telescopes. We'll look at that book. We'll look at this book, which we'll cover more on tomorrow. At least the topic in general we'll cover more in detail tomorrow on the second part of the creation seminar, me and Iger, tomorrow night. So make sure you're there for that. But giants on record, we'll look at some of those. And then lastly, we're actually going to take a look at the hydroplate theory, in order to really give you the bigger picture on what's going on with ancient advanced technology. So, where to begin? I think we'll first, I guess, just let me summarize what I believe happened. Okay, I believe in the literal story of Noah's Ark. Yeah, I know it's crazy, but it's better believing than you came from a rock, which is what, I understand some people believe in the world, but we won't get off too much on them. I believe that around 4,500 years ago, God destroyed the world with a global flood. Now, before that flood happened, the Bible says that there were people alive that were everybody that was alive. Okay, were growing to be a lot taller. The plants were bigger. The animals were bigger. It's a tropical condition, just like perfect weather everywhere. They lived to be nearly 1,000 years old. Everybody before the flood, and so you can learn a lot. Okay, living to be nearly 1,000, and it says that there was people who understood how to work with brass, how to work with iron. Okay, an artificer of brass. If I could find that verse, my phone here, and then there was another one who was skilled in making instruments. So I'm going to find that verse real quick. And if anybody wants, I don't know what the comment sections look like. Let me look on there. If anybody wants to get to that verse before I do and put it up in the comment section, you're welcome to do that. So let's bring Iger in here. What's going on?
Not much, man. Antiquity tech, bro. This is a cool topic, man, and it's definitely not my field of expertise. But I've seen some interesting posts on some of weird stuff, bro. Weird stuff, like the blimps, bro. Like the blimps. There's some cool stuff on blimps. I could probably try to look up. But yeah, man, nice to see you. Hope you're having a great day. And thanks for having me on, bro. But yeah, I'll go start saving some stuff while you do your presentation. I'll see what I can find real quick. I didn't know you were doing this tonight.
All right, so Genesis 4:22, Zillah. She also bare Tubal Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron, and the sister of Tubal Cain was Naamah. They were working with gold, silver, and brass in the time of the Exodus. Like Moses led the children of Israel, like working with it, making strings out of brass and gold, making threads out of it so they can tie stuff together. Like they know how to make instruments before the flood, which that verse was also in there. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all such as handle the harp and organ. And there was another guy, Ada, and he had cattle. So forget the whole story about how agriculture started 10,000 years ago. You're full of crap according to God's word. It's not true. And even if you look at that logically, if you're saying that we came out of Africa 100,000 years ago, why wouldn't we learn how to, a basic concept of herding animals together, so that you don't have to go hunt them every day, like if they're cows or if they're deers or whatever, what have you, like herd them up and breed them. It's called farming. So basic, is it really that hard to figure out? If you've been surviving for millions of years, if you evolved from a monkey, damn, you ought to be able to figure out how to farm. It's completely insane. You're like starved, naked, and destitute as a monkey, basically, with no intelligence at all, and you believe that you evolved that. That's what the status quo is that we evolved from primates, that we are in fact primates. But that's not what archaeology actually shows. Okay, so the invention of writing, for instance, goes back no more than 5,000 years ago. It doesn't matter what secular, non-Christian, university or college that you go to for these answers. There is no answer other than about 5,000 years ago. And the oldest languages that can be reasonably reconstructed are already modern, sophisticated, and complete. And I'm getting off on a little thing here, but the point is, before the flood, people already understood how to do this. So if Noah had all this information too, he's like 600 years old himself. So I'm sure he's learned this. I'm sure if he's going to be the one to reboot humanity, then he's going to have to know some stuff, okay? And he passed it on to his children. There's good evidence, okay, in the archaeological record that indicates very strongly multiple lines of evidence all over the world, pointing us to a one common ancestor civilization, if you will. Started over like near modern day Iraq, okay, where the Bible says the Tower of Babel was erected. That's how they were able to build such a tower in the first place. It's because they had advanced technology to work with stone. This is why. And even, like I said, non-Christian secular universities will tell you that we came from Mesopotamia. That's the birthplace of civilization itself. All right, we're done with that. So Noah's about 600 years old. He passes this on to his children. They all eventually end up in what would be modern day Iraq. They built the tower, and then God confused the languages, and they scatter to all the other parts of the world. Some having this knowledge, but because of the division of the language, they a lot of people lose knowledge. So you're kind of put in a Gilligan's Island situation at that point, where you have a lot of smart people with very little resources. And so they all use what they have in different areas in the best way that they know how. So when we look with that, we should be able to make a prediction, that the oldest, civilizations that we can find are already, advanced. Even if they seem to be primitive, they're still surviving. They're still building society, and they have. You can even look at Neanderthals, and they're making instruments, for crying out loud. Like, we used to think that they're like brute knuckle walking savages, and now we understand that they understood basic language. They understood how to make flutes, make music. They understood a lot of stuff that they didn't give them credit for in the past. So that's my theory. Around 4,500 years ago, there was a flood. And then the 8 people that came off of that ark, which survived the flood and repopulated humanity, had knowledge to work with iron, to work with brass, to work with stone, to make musical instruments, to speak a sophisticated language, which would only be one at that time. So now we're going to begin looking at these books. So, Iger, if you have anything you want to input, feel free.
Not yet. Most of the stuff that I've seen It doesn't really point out only a few things because there's like a temple somewhere, right? And they say there's no way people could in the pyramids also, but they like there's no way these people could have built moved these stones. They're so big. So you got a lot of cities like that, like Machu Picchu. You got the pyramids. You got certain locations around the world. There's some type of temple to I think it was a temple to a pagan god, and how that was already have foundations. And then a lot of these natives, when they were asked, how they built these, and they say that they didn't build them, it was a civilization before theirs. So it'd be like before the flood, there was, advanced civilization everywhere. Uh, but most of the stuff I'm getting that I'm finding right now is it's like post flood, like to the 1800s per se. It was like people had some pretty advanced tech. Um, so I'm gonna keep looking, bro. Carry on, my friend. Let's go with the books.
You could Google Göbekli Tepe, and that's the that's oldest known city like to even like exist. And it's like there's like T pillars is what they call them, many tons in weight. And there's even like artifacts that have been discovered, perfect carvings of these like heads of different animals. And then on the pillars themselves, there's 3D engravings on there of different kinds of animals. It's they basically cut around the stone so that whatever image that they're portraying on that canvas is sticking out. Instead of carving it into it, they carve around it. I mean, these guys are advanced, and it's dated to 12,000 years, and this cannot be disputed by like secular, the peer-reviewed literature, because it's been acknowledged by them. So they're like, well, they're saying now is that they gave the ancients less credit than they should have. And so now they're going to have to slowly rearrange that, but they haven't addressed it yet. It's kind of like a mystery. They kind of just like say, well, we haven't found any of the tools that they used to do this, so we're going to have to just put this on the shelf because we can't access information. They know that it can't be accomplished with, like, that's what they say that they use is like, chisels and hammers and hacksaws in order to accomplish this stuff. But that's what they have to say because they have no other answers. If you don't have the tools that they used to make them, well, then you're going to have to assume that they just had tools that were available to them, like as the primitive beasts that they thought that they were, which they're not. But Jamie Russell is in the chat now.
Hello, Mr.
Relief
Russell.
carving in stone. Yeah, I guess that's the technical term for what I was describing. So thanks for that, Jamie. The knowledge, you always bring the knowledge. If you want to jump in here, feel free to click the link at the top of the comment section. Here we go. Ancient American civilizations. These civilizations are strikingly similar to the other civilizations, okay? The ones in Europe, megalithic structures in Europe, megalithic structures in Egypt, megalithic structures in India. Basically all the same basic principles, okay? Pyramids in India, pyramids in Europe, pyramids in Africa, pyramids in North America, pyramids in South America. It looks like we came from one civilization. It's what it looks like because that's what's happening. And like I said, even secular research will say we all came from Mesopotamia, but it was not some 100,000 years ago or something. We didn't come out of Africa 100,000 years ago and then learn how to farm 90,000 years later. This is not true. We came from an ark, landed over in Mount Ararat, over what would be today modern Turkey, and then 8 people got off that boat, depopulated the world. You want evidence, so I understand you want evidence. What is that? I mean, these are ancient Peruvians, like almost 2,000 years ago. And how are they doing this without machinery? You know what they say? Well, hacksaw. They're using chisels and spending hours and hours and hours. They're many, many tons. Okay, it's like the largest stone in this particular uh, building here, I believe, is 100 to 200 tons. Okay, it's like we're talking a minimum of 200,000 pounds. Uh, so it's a big weight. And they have to quarry it, okay, and carry it like over mountains and stuff. It's a video that I played at the beginning. So you explain, not only do you have a problem transporting these massive stones, but then you're going to have to perfectly carve them and then set them into position without cement so that you couldn't even put a razor blade in between the spaces of the blocks. And then setting them in there like that, you'd need like cranes, you'd need massive machinery in order to accomplish this.
You know what I think? I think they were poor, just like we pour concrete, we pour mass to make bricks. So yeah, I think that's how these ancient structures were made. They were poured, and then they, especially after the flood, they turned into more petrified. But they were already petrified, just like concrete turns into stone in a few hours. They were using something to pour their stones. That's why you can't fit anything in between them, because they were poured right on top of the next one. All right,
Yeah,
bro. That's just my theory.
one theory, but the problem is what it's made out of. If it was originally soft and they poured it and it hardened, you'd be able to tell based on a chemical analysis. These are rocks that were formed by heat and pressure. They're igneous, come from a molten state. And so they quarried this, and they find the quarry too, where they dug it out and had to transport it from. I have no idea how they did that, but we know that, the location where they quarried it from, that's the most mind-boggling part. Is
All right.
now, here's a pyramid. I'll tell you where this is in a second. It's like Pyramid of the Nietzsche's central structure of El Tajin civilization, untouched for some 500 years. It was deep within the Mexican rainforest in 1785. That's where they found it. So it was like covered in grass and trees. Like you're not going to be able to see it unless you're kind of looking for it, I guess. But I think somebody stumbled across it, actually. And so they've cleared it out now. But it's a perfect pyramid. And they're supposed to be like primitives down there, South America, America, it's like the natives of the land. They only know how to hunt and gather, right? Well, why are they building a pyramid if they only know how to hunt and gather? That doesn't make any sense. That's not even practical. Nobody's going to live in the pyramid. So why are you building? Why go through all of that work? Had to be some kind of ceremonial purpose, which means that they were very artistic as a culture, and they were engineers. They were master architects, expert stonemasons. They came from Noah. So, again, ancient America, South and North America, already working with gold. There's gold right there, artifact. It's like a mask guy. It's like made of pottery, so it's hollow on the inside. Same thing as a vase, except they made it in the shape of a human. And let's see, here's another gold artifact right here. So there wasn't a Stone Age, and then a Brass Age, and an Iron Age, and a Gold Age. That's all propaganda, okay, that just comes from the media, and that's what they have to say to maintain the status quo. That's the whole purpose of the status quo. If you're going to have a market in anything, that you have to have a central theme. and you don't want competitors. Okay, that's marketing 101. So if they're going to sell science, they better be selling one viewpoint or the other, or it's just not going to make any money. And it's as simple as that. Okay, so if they want a monopoly, they want to earn the money and get their grants from the government, they're going to have to stick to one paradigm. So there's a bunch of little stones that they made a whole town out of. And that's perfect geometry. This is master stonemasonry. Here's another pyramid in South America. I mean, that thing is massive. Some of these almost are as big as the Great Pyramid. They're so huge. So all of those...
The pyramid's actually in China, believe it or not. Never heard about it, but yeah.
And imagine if you were leading this team. We're going to get these stones, we're going to set them here. This is how we're going to fit them. Well, if you say, oh, well, they had all of these slaves and they weren't feeding him, and they was just going hours and hours. Like, well, if they don't know really anything about how to work the stone, if they're not like mastered, stonemasons themselves, and they're just like these slaves are being put to, like use brute force to, make them move stuff for you, and they don't really have any knowledge. Well, how are you getting all these people to work together like one unit, like a colony of ants, just with one mind, setting these stones into perfect position? And that is a massive achievement if you do that. But that's not actually what happened. Okay, it was probably a lot of people, definitely, but they were all very intelligent, and it wasn't like a bunch of slaves. These people knew what they were doing, and they had advanced technology on top of that. All right. The Nazca lines can only be seen from the sky. There's Jamie. I don't know how long he's been waiting as a guest.
Hello, Jamie.
These can only be seen from the sky.
Hours
shape.
And hours.
And then here's another one. Yeah, I hope you weren't waiting there too long, Jay.
No. I gotta get you. I'm gonna send you a phone, though. I'm gonna tell you that much. You needed a phone. Is that a camera you're using?
Yeah, on the laptop.
I'm gonna send you a camera or something. It's not terrible. I mean, could be worse, I guess.
Yeah.
We see you. I think I see two eyes and a mouth and a nose in there somewhere.
Got more Ica stones than this one. Or not Ica stones. We'll get to those in a minute. But the Nazca line. This one is very interesting. It's a
Spider-Man
that they drew on the desert, and it has one leg that's shorter than the other ones. Now, there's a very tiny microscopic spider that's living in a cave many miles away from that location, and it lives in the dark. It's totally dark in the cave. They're deep down in that cave, and these spiders are blind, so during mating season, they actually grow one of their legs out a little bit. That shorter leg extends for like mating purposes. So how did these ancient South American natives figure out that there was a microscopic spider somewhere in some cave in the dark? Can't even see it without a microscope. Or you wouldn't be able to see it with the blind eye. If it was just like one crawling around, you probably have to have a lot of them to really see them. So they're super tiny. And how do they know that it has a leg? That in itself is evidence that they were able to use telescopes. They were able to use microscopic lenses, okay? And they were able to get aerial, okay? Airborne. Because why else would they draw these giant figures on the desert, that are miles and miles across? You can only see them if you're in the sky. If you have an overhead view, that doesn't make any sense. That's Patasaurus was drawn on one of the Nazca lines.
Don't you think that was just wind and erosion?
Wind and erosion, possibly, Jamie. I can see that.
It was guided by 5G and nanobots.
I got to keep the skeptics interested, so that is one way of looking at it.
All natural.
Yep. I don't know if you could explain that, though, because these are some South American ancient toys that the kids were playing with. Has wheels. That looks like a damn steam engine. So how do you explain that, skeptics?
Wow, that's a trip, dude. That one. Wow. That's like a. It totally looks like some sort of. You know, it's
Bro, I
not
wish
merely.
I could-
It's not merely utilizing a wheel. That's like a vehicle.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, they have the concept of the wheel. And is it really hard to believe when the Bible, going all the way back to Exodus, talks about chariots, you know? So I don't find this hard to believe at all. But for some reason, people who believe in evolution theory, and they believe the primate story, they really have a hard time grasping this because it's
There's
really
so
hard
much
to
to
get
get
in
wrong.
there. You have
We
to-
can accept. Do you think we can accept that man's like advanced obviously through time, but like it's clear to me. I think people make too much of that. Like even from a biblical perspective, we're gonna like have some of that, but like it's underestimating the power of the human mind. I think they could have had some stuff that we couldn't imagine right now, like people that mainstream stuff couldn't imagine. I mean, there's limits obviously, but like who knows the limit?
There was this one guy who learned how to play the piano, just like he'd never taken a lesson or whatever, and then he got like he got concussed or got
I
put
saw
in a
that.
coma and
Yeah,
came
it's
out.
unbelievable. And he just like sits down at the piano and looks at it, and he's just kind of like ding, 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 and he like plays a few chords, and he's just like just plays anything instantly.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
I don't know
It's amazing.
whether to believe it or not, but it sounded legit. He sounded like us.
Yeah, it seemed legit when I saw it. And like there's stories like that of other things too, right? Becoming a math genius, so like from like having a very particular kind of brain injury that puts a particular kind of stress on your brain, and then it can change something. I forget. It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, that was. Oh, The Unexplained. Shout out William Shatner. It's a great show.
Maybe that's what it was. There was somebody who could paint or became an artist, like a really good artist too. Like on that, I want to say on that show that I saw the way you're talking about on.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about though, like in the past? I don't want to interrupt your thing or whatever if you got more to do or whatever, but
You're good.
along these lines, like. So, have you seen that movie where I think it's called or the one where like the guy gets like a robot suit put on him and he like tries to get that girl up to the space station or whatever? It's like called Elysium or something maybe, or no, it's not that, but it's like a space station that's like heaven for them kind of thing. And he I forget. Anyways, he gets like in a heater and they put like an exoskeleton in him or whatever. Matt Damon. Anyway, like a guy gets blown up. And they like put him in a booth thing and it like reconstructs him and like so he doesn't die, but his like face is blown off. Anyway, that would make me think about like Adam and Eve were indestructible. That doesn't even make sense, right? Like so, like obviously they were more advanced and probably healthier and like could repair who knows how much faster, right? But like still, you could still like jump off a cliff or smash your head with something giant, right? Like how would that work? Like potentially like were they stepping on, like you could accidentally like potentially like run over an animal or something, right? Like if you built a machine or something. Like how I've wondered like how to think about that, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking that that's like maybe a job for the angels, because it says, in the Bible how they wouldn't let you dash your foot against a stone. That's what Satan tempted Jesus with. But that's in a sinful condition. If you were perfect, they'd probably just swoop right down before anything could happen to you. And just be like, what are you doing, dude?
Maybe your awareness is like so acute, right?
Yeah.
Like who knows?
So,
I want to go dirt biking still, stuff like that. That's all I'm saying. Or like snowboarding off a cliff and like I might mess up or whatever. Maybe, I don't know. If everybody's like super good at everything or perfect, there's a point where like it wouldn't be fun anymore. Maybe I'm just thinking out loud, but.
No, yeah, I don't like that idea that we like.
I believe that when we go to heaven, for instance, we will start out with all the Bible knowledge that we currently have. If we didn't read the Bible, we basically won't know any of it, just like when we were on earth, and we'll have to progressively learn it. So it's a good motivation to read your Bible. You might have a, closer seat or something.
Or yeah, or even I think science and stuff is good properly understood. So like, I think we're going to continue to learn. We'll just have less disadvantages or whatever, unless like there won't be it would be like no, or let's put it this way, there won't be hindrances like that are everybody will have abilities that we don't have like the best person has now, but like we'll still be individuals and like have to learn stuff. I don't think we'll be able to like necessarily like fly wherever we want or like instantly teleport anywhere we want in the universe. It depends on your view of like heaven. I think the new heaven and the new earth is like coming back to earth restored in the end. So how that works, I don't know, but I have like that's weird, I guess. Like I talked to Christians about this recently, and it's like my understanding of the Bible is that we go to heaven, but then we come back to the earth, and Christ rules on the earth forever. But it's restored or recreated, even something like that. It's not clear to me, but I don't think we're like in heaven per se. Like that's like you know what I mean? Doesn't it seem like we come back in the like Revelation 22, and it's like Eden restored, only better maybe, or something like that. I don't know, but that gets kind of weird, I guess. But because God had created us to be on the earth, it seems to me, right? And then we messed it up or whatever. So like I don't know. It does seem to indicate that it might be even better than Eden or something, but whatever that means, I don't know. People say to me like, once the end of the age comes, like there's no more children. I don't see where the Bible necessitates that. It seems like Jesus just says there's no having children in heaven, but that's not the final destination as far as like at the end of the age, right? Like, doesn't it? What's your view on that?
I don't know, because you went through quite a few things. Maybe.
So yeah, I guess I just said, do you think we come back to an earth at the end, like a new created, or like Jesus recreates the earth or whatever, something like that? It seems like it says new heavens and new earth, right? I don't know. Like we go to heaven, right? Like, so I have to remember, like I have different views than some people. So I don't have this idea that we go to heaven when we die, but that we do go to heaven at the end of the age when Jesus returns. He takes it all to heaven for like during like after the tribulation. So I agree with you guys on that, but that doesn't necessarily have to mean to disagree with the final destination. But like, you believe that Jesus comes back and it ends the world, right? And so even if you go to heaven now, like when people die, if they're in heaven now, that's fine. But like after the end of the age, when Jesus returns and destroys the Antichrist and like the millennium, however you see that, but like after that, then you see that like being restored on the earth or something. So that's what I want to know. If you think eternity is on earth or heaven, in heaven, which one is it? How do you look at it?
Yeah, I have a restored earth theology. That's even Baptists that I respect, like they also hold that view. So that was really interesting to me because I wouldn't think that they would consider that to be like Jehovah's Witness or Seventh-day Adventist and choose not to teach that just for that reason. But they actually, have conceded, with the scripture because that's what it says, that there's not going to be a complete where God takes the earth and poof, it no longer exists. Like he's going to destroy it. But the thing about the earth is there's a lot of fire underneath it. So you can basically just recycle it. And then you could still say it was a new earth if you just,
exactly. Yeah, that's kind of how I look at it too. Yeah. It doesn't really matter to me really if it's the same planet per se, but like it probably is, I would think. Like I don't even know how to think of it. Like it depends on like how fallen the creation is, how intrinsically fallen it is. Some people like to say like the entropy is a thing, but I think that's kind of necessary in a certain degree. I think it's going to be more like I've actually changed my view on this. I think it's entropy is actually like at base is actually part of like what's necessary for like life and to eat and all that. So like, but in another sense, there is entropy that's bad that he's going to restore. But I mean like the general like scientific sense of like how things work, like things get mixed together and like, like you mix something together, you can't unmix it, because it's soluble, just stuff like that. I mean, but like, because if you think about it, it kind of suggests in Genesis that man was in a sense made like God didn't take away this magic thing called immortality. It seems like to me, like the tree of life was making us immortal and God took that away. And then we just started deteriorating. Because I think that's like in a way that you don't have to take that view. And I'm not sure about it. I just think that's what the text seems to suggest. Some scholars will say because we're made from the dust, that intrinsic in that idea of that, I take it literally, but there is something to the idea of being dust that later in the Bible seems to suggest that you're mortal. So like without God's provision or without God sustaining you, you would deteriorate. But like the tree of life is what was like something, a way of like trusting God, and then He took that away, and then we started to die, right? So like there may be something to that. I don't know, but my point was just that like um, there's a way that death is kind of related to just how things work, like in the sense that like they need nutrition to function, and then they can get sick if you don't have the nutrition, right? So in a way you're like kind of dying unless you have, so maybe that's the way God designed it on some level. I don't think there was suffering and animals dying or anything, but I think that's possible in any ways. I don't know. But who knows how much it could change, like when they do those snake bites and then they find out like you shock the person and it like rearranges the molecules or whatever of the poison, and it turns it into like not poisonous or whatever just from shocking it. So like who knows how many like properties could come forth from just like a slight rearrangement of like our DNA or whatever. Like it could just be like 100 times better instantly because it's just like put back in order, like in some like shift or whatever, something like that. I don't know. That's a lot of stuff I'm throwing at you. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a lot,
I'm
bro.
following all of it. But
I got lots of ideas.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I actually don't disagree with like any of your ideas there. I think you're going in the right direction there. It's all. So yeah, you did cover a lot of things. I don't know if I could like rehash them myself, but I don't disagree with any of it.
I got
Probably.
the one thing. So according to my worldview now, right? There's something called Rupes Negra in the middle. Rupes Negra, which means black rock, right? And then let me show you real quick, anyways. So I kind of hold to that being where the Garden of Eden was once at, and then if you look at these old maps, which I'm going to show you real quick, I just put Rupes Negra, and supposedly it's a magnetic mountain in the middle. So yeah, and also if you look at this map right here, it's got like 4 rivers coming out of it, 4 little islands. There's a little black magnetic rock in the middle. So that could have been the tree of life once upon a time. And then people talk about, like every ancient civilization has like kind of like a Garden of Eden place. They call it Agartha. They call it, I think, Shangri-La. It's like the land of 1,000 names. The Garden of Eden. It has a lot of names throughout different people's mythologies. But yeah, I kind of hold to the North Pole having this magnetic mountain and a little whirlpool in the middle. And maybe that's where the tree of life was at in the beginning. What you're saying, Jamie, and then God took it away. It's just a little tree stump. And maybe that's why we disintegrate too. That kind of would make sense too, because at first, God expels Adam and Eve from the garden, and then later after like the flood, he cuts down the lifespan a little bit, so maybe part of the tree could have been hidden, and then I think later after that, he cuts down man's lifetimes again. So that kind of makes a little bit of sense, Jamie, what you were saying. All right, that was it.
No, yeah, because the tree of life definitely is physical. The Bible says that there was cherubims with flaming swords surrounding that tree, in every direction. So you don't want to get near that tree. It's actually like the garden, but it might actually say the tree of life. I don't know. But either way, you can't access that tree. There's a reason why God removed them from the Garden of Eden and placed those cherubims there. It was for the specific purpose that they would not eat of the tree of life and live forever. So yeah, Jamie is right on that. The immortality that we have is going to be obtained by the fruit that's spoken of in the book of Revelation that gives healing to the nations. So if you could just live forever without anything, well then why do you need this fruit? Why do you need the tree of life?
This is something like that God has designed for us to do, to eat and then eat some more, and eat some more so we can sustain ourselves. It's why we, drink water and keep having to drink water. That's like just the way that God has designed it.
You know what
He
I
wants
think?
to sustain us forever.
This is yeah, exactly. That's right. And you know what it does is what that teaching does. I know people think Adventists are not or have like salvation mixed up or whatever, but I I see in the Bible that that the all through there, like with God putting on the clothes when they tried to cover themselves with fig leaves and all that, and with the Jacob and or Abraham and Isaac, God will provide. Like he was trying to say, like the whole thing that went wrong is they did stop trusting God. They did not keep their faith in trusting God, and they wanted to do it themselves. They went their own way. In other words, they didn't trust God's provision, and so it's always been a faith issue. That is the problem. It's not if you're good or bad or you keep the commandments or not. Ultimately, it's that God's trying to show you have to trust me. He's saying, and that's what he's trying to get us to do. And so that's the foundation of everything. Like everything else is just a result of not having faith. That's what he says when it's like anything without faith is sin. But yet transgression of the law is sin. Well, the root problem is faith, the faith issue. And so God's been trying to show all along in all the stories right from the beginning that it was a lack of faith in his word. So is what the tree of life is teaching, and that was designed intrinsically into man to show us. And I think it's not as clear in the text, but you can infer this easily, is that the tree of life makes you dependent on God. It makes you understand you need him to provide for you. And so he took it away when they decided to not let God provide for them or be in charge. Not in a controlling per se way, but a necessary way, because he knows he has to be the one that provides for them. Because it's the only way they'll survive.
He said, lest they take of it and eat forever. Because if you're going to be in a sinful condition, you do not want to live forever. That would not be good for anybody. That you see what happened, to the people before the flood. They got drowned by the flood because they're living too long and they're living in a paradise and they're sinful. They get really smart and really intelligent. You know how the youngsters get. They're like, you can't tell them nothing because they're just so badass in their own eyes. That's what happened to the world before the flood. A bunch of arrogant people. And
that is such a good point. Like they're like a microcosm of like the worst in a certain way, but they're still young, so it's like they're not as guilty, but like it's super apparent with the condition in a sense, right? Like maybe not as depraved or in a way, it's just kind of more in an ignorant sense, but it's a really obvious display of the issue, right? Of not trusting God and being rebellious. It's like in a constrained kind of way. I mean, but like ultimately it's an engulfing kind of way, right, of mankind. But like, so it is all about faith, but at the same time, like, I mean, I know you probably don't watch my stuff or whatever, but like people have a big issue with me, like saying about keeping the commandments. Is like, it makes total sense to me because like, I know you don't believe it or whatever, but it's just like the final test is going to be like that last little thing. Like, will you do what God says, trust him? And that's why whatever it is, I think it may have something to do with like God finishing, showing us to have faith, to listen to him and to do what he says, kind of thing, or something like that. But the main issue is faith, and like you can't be saved without faith, obviously, right? You have to trust God, and so that's why I don't totally disagree with people on soteriology who are like, have a different view than me, as long as they understand justification is by faith, because that's the problem from the beginning.
Yeah, agreed. Let's get back to these
Antiquitech, pre-flood technology.
So
we got
ancient Peruvian burial stones. These are stones that they used to place with their dead for like ceremonial purposes. So they're found all in the graves. This isn't disputed. There are stones in the grave. What's disputed is if they're like dinosaurs or stuff like this drawn on them, like C-sections. What is that? So yeah, C-section. There's a heart surgery on there. On one of them, there's a brain surgery.
This is a Stegosaurus. Not
Cambodia,
that we're
right?
going to talk about dinosaurs and man, but I mean, that's on an ancient temple.
So
That
they're
isn't even the
Cambodian.
right picture. Let me see.
Angkor Wat.
Here it is, right here. Stegosaurus. The Hindus believe that their culture is millions of years old, and that's how they explain that. But let's forget the Hindus for a second. It could be that not only was ancient man advanced, but he was also living with dinosaurs. I don't know. Here's these same burial stones with, two different stones with people using telescopes drawn on them. But Galileo, right? He was supposed to invent the telescope some time ago. The 1800s or something. When was that, Iger? That Galileo invented the telescope? Invented?
I'll look it up. Somewhere around the 1500s, I think.
Well, that's a total lie. These are almost 2,000 years old.
1609, according to Google.
I think it's a little earlier than that.
1609 says Google.
Oh, really? Okay, not bad.
But no, listen to this, Chris, because I didn't know this till Chris told me.
Nice.
And he has like some crazy pre Galileo telescopes. Is that what you're gonna cover or no? Or are you just going over stuff briefly?
Hold on a second. What did you
So I know
say?
you told me. I was like, man, I never even heard that before, and I've been looking at this stuff for like 3 years already, 4 years, and I never even heard about that. But yeah, these ancient civilizations had telescopes a long time ago, and it's Galileo was a Jesuit. You got these Jesuits and Masons. They always capitalize and they want us to look at them all the time for our facts or whatever, and they cover up all the normal people that came out with like a lot of great inventions, and this is how they can control the monopolies. They just they're kind of like the authoritative figure, just like now we're just little people looking at stars, so nothing we say can never contradict what NASA says. They figured out the stars, how far they are, how big they are. They look at the little blurs. They got high-tech computers. And all right, I went on a little rant there. I think I'm getting off topic, but yeah.
No,
NASA.
Kind of topic of that. That's an ancient technology, ancient astronomy.
Technology, yeah.
They knew a lot about the stars because they were able to use telescopes. That's what the stuff indicates. Again, with the burial stones, brain surgery. I mean, that's not even disputed that they knew how to do brain surgery, because I can go to the Osteology Museum in Oklahoma City. Okay, it's like 3 hours away from here, and there is a Peruvian skull. Okay, the state archaeologist specializes in this. Got her PhD. Did a dissertation on these brain surgery skulls. So you talk to her. I don't know what her name is. I forget, but that it's proven. Okay, that is an intentional, like opening in the skull, and they show by microscopic analysis that it healed over. So this was a successful brain surgery from the Peruvians. Go to Osteology Museum in Oklahoma City if you don't believe it. You can see the skulls for yourself on display. They might even let you go behind the glass and touch them. I don't know. And you can talk to the state geologist, archaeologist. I forget. Yeah, she's an archaeologist. Would have to be if you're specializing in this. So, yeah, you can talk to her. And again, I don't know her name. Anyway, that's all for that. Got some more books. This one is called. Yeah, it's all right. As long as you get the concept. This one's called The Crystal Sun by Robert Temple. So that was on an ancient piece of pottery. That's also the back part. It's like the main topic of the book is ancient, use of magnifying lenses and microscopic lenses, telescopes, stuff like that. So I'll show you some pictures. This is stuff that he found in his travels. Goes like to all over the world and travels museums. Robert Temple is like a major conspiracy archaeologist, okay, like crypto archaeologist. He believes in the ancient advanced technology, unlike most of the archaeologists. And so that guy is awesome. So here it is again. This is plate 10. He has each of them, like he identifies them as plates in the book, and then you can read about them in the book in detail. So these eyes right here on these statues
Creepy.
will actually follow you. When you move left or right, the lenses on those eyes will follow you. You can go to the museums that are in Egypt and see statues like this with these kinds of eyes that follow you when you move around. They can look YouTube videos, okay? And that means that they had the ability to manipulate lenses, to work with glass enough to where you could actually, you know, bend the light with it. These are different little pieces, you know, like little discs and stuff that you would find in all these kinds of museums, which as documented, you can read about them in detail. Plate 3, okay? You can put them up next to, you know, text, and it will actually magnify it. So these are legitimate magnifying lenses, and some of them are even corrective lenses. He believes that they were used by some of the kings and stuff to, you know, wear his prescription glasses, believe it or not. So they passed them off, you know, as like jewelry, some kind of necklace piece, but they're actually magnifying lenses. They can be used as such. Now, that's not really hard to believe, considering that they were able to accomplish these kinds of things right here. Here's another one of those, I think what you called relief pressure, but this is highly detailed. I'm not sure how you'd even be able to accomplish this if you didn't know how to bend light and cast shadows and use magnifying lenses. It'd be very hard. There's certain cultures that actually would build underground, like the famous Egyptian picture, for instance, with the people with the light bulb, that big ass light bulb, looks like they're connecting.
Yeah.
Well, that was done in complete darkness, and it's in a cave. So how are you supposed to do that without light, without natural light? You can't just use a torch.
I know, right? Yeah, and there's no torch indication of torch or whatever on there, and like they couldn't have cleaned it off without another source of light. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, what would if our civilization totally collapsed and like people barely survived and they were like digging back out of the, like, you know, having to remake, you know, reinvent stuff or whatever, you know, from like the ground up, and they found like remnants of our computer parts like chipped up somewhere, they'd probably say it was parts of jewelry or something we wore in our clothes, you know, it's just like as an ornament. You know what I mean? They find like resistors and they would be like, oh yes, this is a bead for their jewelry, you know, and it's really a resistor from a computer. I mean, it's that sort of thing that's funny. Like, you know, stuff like that happens because they expect it to be something primitive, and it's not necessarily the case.
Well, yeah, they even found those gears or whatever. I can't remember what, but this is rather recent where they found, like, in the ocean or something.
Yeah, the Antikythera machine, that one.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
It was like a they figured out what it was. It's like, and they remade it. It was like a advanced computer for sailing.
It was
It charted the stars by like being programmable.
As far as I'm aware, they are actually acknowledging that it was some kind of like gadget, some kind of machine.
Yeah, it would chart stars for you like in an advanced way. It was a machine that it was like had all the gears were like a way to chart things in a really complex way for navigation.
It you can use it. You can use it. They could use it for like to predict the movements of the sky, kind of like we have NASA now, but or other things like the planisphere or astrolabe. But this thing was so intricate. It was like a clock, and it just kept track of the stars, and it was so intricate. It kept the sun, the moon, um, and the planets. So it was pretty cool. I think it. No, I don't know if it had the planets, but it had the moon to the point where it could predict the eclipses as well. The anti-Kira mechanism. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it predicted eclipses. It says here. It says it's the oldest example. It's an ancient Greek hand-powered orrery, like the things that would make the planets move around, you know, in their orbits. Described as the oldest example of an analog computer used to predict astronomical positions and eclipses decades in advance. It could also be used to track the 4-year cycle of athletic games, which was similar to the Olympiad, the cycle of the ancient Olympic Games, according to Wikipedia.
What year was it made? I feel like it was made like around the time of Jesus for some reason.
I think before that.
Like how long does it say?
Well, I would say that would. Let's see if it gives a date here. I'll see. Let me see.
I heard a funny, not a funny story, but I heard a story about that it was supposedly made by Archimedes, and I want to say somebody was conquering the region at that time, and they were supposed to get the device and the person with it, but then they accidentally killed Archimedes, so then they couldn't figure out how to use it. I don't know if the story is true or not, but I kind of, for some reason, I recall hearing about that.
It says somewhere between. It's either 87 BC, so before Jesus was born, 150 to 100 BC, which is even later, you know, older, or up to the year 205 BC. And the way they get there, they say these. So the moon's velocity and perigee to apogee was measured by Hipparchus of Rhodes, and so he had as far as we know, as far as what they knew, and they have much of their writings, the Greek writings, I guess. So based on what we know, what they did when the first guy to learn the things that would be necessary at that time, according to them, right? That doesn't necessarily mean, but they're probably around right. Around it would appear then that his knowledge was necessary for them to have made that in that region. So that's how they kind of date it.
Yeah, that's not disputed either. That it was an ancient machine. So, and like what you were saying, it predates all of this stuff. They even say, you know, that the people who made Stonehenge and the people who made the Colosseum, the Romans, like they understood how to work with cranes. They had their own ancient cranes, you know, like what you would call primitive cranes, but they're able to lift several tons. Definitely not hundreds of tons like these megalithic structures. But if they had the ability to work with cranes 2,000 years ago, well, then maybe they had the ability to build an ancient, like an advanced crane, you know, farther back than that. If they had the ability to make that, you know, that gadget with all those different kinds of gears and all this amazing stuff, why couldn't they make it?
Go ahead.
No, you're good.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I have read some of the literature on some of the megalithic strikes. This is just as incredible, though, really. But some of the stuff you hear about, like they couldn't, you know, that was impossible for them to do. Like they could actually do some pretty amazing stuff in Roman times. Like they weren't stupid. Like there's actually we actually have writings and like diagrams of them moving those huge stones under some of those sites or whatever. We don't have the stuff going way back to biblical Old Testament stuff, but we have stuff in Romans time. They were moving some really amazingly big stuff, like some of those big platform, multi-ton platforms. There's good evidence that they actually had a way of doing that, I guess, like that's actually documented, and like people don't realize that. Not on all that stuff, but some of it you'd be surprised what
use was refurbished and, you know, dedicated by Herod the Great, and some of those foundation stones are massive. Like,
yeah, like people think it like we couldn't do it now, so they couldn't do it then. Like they had ways we know of that they could do some pretty amazing stuff even in like recorded history times. So like some of the hype on some stuff is hype, but like, you know, as far as there's ways they difficult to explain the pyramids and all that, but like stuff after that, like it's more to do with like the quality. Like it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say like a lot of these, because you know we talk about the end times a lot, and you got like the Greek and the Roman Empire, and then we got these different empires. They kind of like, I don't know, they kind of keep monopolizing all this antiquitech, and then you know they put a space on to make it so that we're dependent on us, so we don't learn all these ancient knowledge. So we're dependent on you know, whatever government or corporation at the time. Like now we're so dependent on the oil industry. And when like for cars, for example, man, I've been trying to tell Christopher, and I think I told Jamie too, about this guy that made cars run on water. His name was Stanley. What's his name, man? They'll come back to you later. But yeah, man, these people knew how to make cars run on water, basically by splitting the hydrogen and the oxygen and using the hydrogen instead of gas. We also had cars used to run on ethanol. We also had steam powered cars, believe it or not, and they were pretty fast. It's not like they were slow; they were pretty fast, man. So, but they want us dependent on oil for some, because then they can control us, they can manipulate us. Now we're going to this battery powered cars, and we use up so many resources to make these batteries, and then they can flip the switch. You know, like I remember when the Ukraine Russia thing started, Ukraine was calling Elon Musk to turn off the cars in Russia. So it's just like more control for whatever monopoly government we're stepping into now in this future globalist society.
Amen to that. I hope
I hope we,
God judges this country soon. Anyways,
yeah.
here's some more
Sorry.
of those eyes that follow you. And then here's some more of the lenses from another museum. This is a miniature. This is half of a walnut shell. Okay, inside of it is this miniature girl, and then these flowers and stuff, and intricate detail. So how do you do that? It's called what is it called? It doesn't have the term on here, but ancient microscopic carving or something like that. It's been in the Chinese culture for, you know, since they've been in existence. So
Microscopy.
something, I don't know,
Something like that.
but yeah, the practice of microscopic carving. So you have to have you have to have a microscope in order to even do this, because you can't see that fine detail. Like you're not going to be able to when you zoom out, it's not going to look good unless you did it correctly. Because like if you're doing it without a microscope, you won't get the details that you get here. And you just try it for yourself. I don't know anything about it. Okay, I'm not an artist, but I'm pretty damn sure that you can't do it without a microscope. You can go ahead and try it if you want, but you can ask the Chinese. They're not. I'm pretty sure they're using microscopes, but this one, it's interesting. So there you go. There's food for thought on that. Little Chinese girl inside of a half a walnut shell. You can go to Egyptian museums and also see stuff like this, which they call it 3D carving. Basically, the light hits it a certain way, and it actually projects off of the canvas. Instead of like the relief carvings where they just carve it to where it sticks out, no, this jumps out at you like it's a 3D projection. And they have little skulls and stuff that actually do that. Like there's a YouTube video of it, but I don't know the name of it. Crystal skulls that have been found, these are perfect skulls made of glass, made of some kind of, I don't know, probably just regular glass of some sort. But, it's a perfect skull. They're not primitive, is the whole point. They're ancient, yes, but that doesn't mean that the ancient doesn't mean primitive. Unless you're thinking that we evolved from some dumb animal, then we would be primitive. We would progress and get smarter and smarter, but that's not what we find when we dig up history. We dig up ancient civilizations. We find sophistication, advanced engineering, culture, religion, music, iron, brass, gold, etc. And then there's more of those eyes. Again, they're all numbered. You can read the book Crystal Sun by Robert Temple, plate 34, plate 35. You can put it up to your eye. You can put it next to, small text, and it will magnify it. The cartoon-like images that the Egyptians like to draw. They're drawing like some kind of a cartoon. It looks like that doesn't mean that they're primitive. Look at what that is drawn onto. It's this massive pillar that's been, perfectly furbished and set into position, and it's still standing there thousands of years later. It's not an ancient people. I'm sorry. They're building, the Great Pyramid. Here's a plate 46. It's the artifact. A woman using a mirror. Mirror, yeah, mirror, huh? Glass gives you a reflection. They understood that in ancient times because they weren't primitive brute beasts. You're a primitive brute beast if you think that. Sorry if that offends you. Actually, I'm not. But there's another magnifying lens there. And then, he gives several of them. This book is just full of actual artifacts that he's, goes in detail, tells you where the museum is. He took the pictures. He has many of these himself as a private collection, And then there's more. So he puts it up next to the words. It magnifies it. Takes a picture. Before magnification. After magnification. Ancient glass lens. Here is one of his theories on what they would actually put the corrective lenses in, or some of the microscopic lenses, is this stick that you see some of the carvings, the people on the carvings, they're like holding up the stick, and it's kind of like a big candy cane. Well, it's a theory that these little circular glass lenses could be placed into that. And so like the rich and classy in the ancient times, go around. Or maybe you could use it as like a pointer. You put the sun on it just right and it would like burn people. I don't know. But that's one of his theories, is you could put it in one of those. And that's why you never find one of those sticks without anything in them. But it looks like, because of the grooves that are within the stick, that you could actually place something in them. Of course, a lot of erosion and time has taken place. But anyways.
You still with us, Jamie? Can I show a post real quick on this car running on water? Because I don't know if I showed it. Jamie, you there? I kind of want you to see it. Jamie,
yeah, I'm here.
All right,
I'm here.
So the guy I first heard about is Stanley Meyer. I heard about this guy. I kind of looked into it. Other people tried it, and they figured out ways to create. Basically, you just take electricity, run it through some steel inside some water, and that'll separate the hydrogen from the oxygen. We still use the process
I can make
today
one.
to make. Perfect. So we can make the process.
Yeah, I've thought about making one. Did
Do it,
HHO dinner sure. It's really
Correct,
easy. You just need some stainless steel plates and the right kind of bolts, and then you just needed something to seal it in, and then you just need a battery and some wires. And then you need to make a way to run it. It's amazing. Like hydrogen burns at like some crazy, like I forget what it is, like 4,000 degrees. The liquid hydrogen. I mean, the gaseous hydrogen, and it burns You can like, yeah, it's cool.
So I thought this was the first guy, right? But recently I saw this other post, so I wanted to show y'all that because I thought he was the first guy, the Stanley Meyer guy. He got killed or whatever by the big oil people. They tried to buy him, like NASA tried to buy his invention, and all the governments, like even the Saudis, try to buy it because it is pretty cool, Jamie. Because we're thinking little here. You could just make your car run, but maybe we can't get enough pressure in whatever thing we build in our garage, right? So, but you can still use it to as a stove. You could use it instead of a gas stove or whatever. As long as you don't keep it stored, it's safe. If you start storing hydrogen, then it can become very dangerous. But if you're just we call it hydrogen on demand when you're just making it and using it right away, then it's pretty safe. But this is a video from 1974, and I'll just let them talk, bro. It's pretty chirpy. I saw this and I was like, "What? I thought Stanley Meyer was the first one," but turns out this stuff been suppressed for a long time. Hold on, let me make sure I got audio.
Something almost literally out of Jules Verne. Something almost literally out of Jules Verne. This car can cruise at speeds of up to 70 odd miles an hour on water. The energy factor, of course, is hydrogen, which, as any schoolboy knows, is contained in water in the ratio of 2 parts to 1 of oxygen. A formula described by Jules Verne more than 100 years ago. So what have we been waiting for? The engine can also power a generator, to provide light and heat. And what's more, it's pollution-free. The car's already run for well over 1,000 miles, and the promoters say the scheme is practical and a commercial proposition. Fuel on tap, in fact. An ordinary day in an ordinary supermarket, passing Rouen Cathedral, something almost literally out of Jules Verne.
Yeah, they're not letting that out to the public. They're going to hide that because oil company would just be demolished.
Jamie's gonna make us some HHO generators, bro. And I'm talking about, I was so curious, right? Because I heard this is how they get the oxygen for hospitals, right? When you go to so I was in the hospital visiting somebody, bro, and I went to the garage. And sure enough, I went all the way to the right, and they had a huge one. You could tell it had like a reservoir for water and tanks, and that's what they were using it for, is to run the process HHO, where they could separate the hydrogen and the oxygen. But instead of taking the hydrogen, they were taking the oxygen to use it for their patients. And I've seen that here in the hospital in Orlando.
Most hospitals have that, yeah, because it's like, if you're a welding shop, you get like those big tanks that look really cool. They're like the size of a refrigerator, but then that's like the extra large ones that refill regular welding tanks. But like,
yeah,
it's
this
really
is like
just
the refrigeration. Like you could see the little canisters,
yeah.
And then they were using that little. It wasn't that big, bro. I would say it was like 20 feet by 20 feet. Plus the reservoir. The reservoir was probably big because it was like a pond per se. But the actual structure where they had the tanks and stuff, it was only like 20 feet by 20 feet. It was open on top, but it had and you could see the empty oxygen tanks, and that's. Go ahead, Jamie.
No, yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure exactly how those work. I guess they're probably just really expensive, but you just can buy a bunch of plates though and design one of any size you want. Like all you have to do is just separate the plates with like a you get a bunch of thin like stainless steel plates so they won't rust, obviously, right? And then and they're conductive, or I think they're stainless steel. And then you just separate them, and then you come up with a way of like connecting them properly. Well, they're separated, and then you just run electricity through it, and then the water just bubbles, and then it comes off at the top, right? You have like an air pocket that catches it, and then the hydrogen is way lighter than the oxygen, so the hydrogen will build up on the top of the gas, in the open area at the top, and it literally just boils kind of, and then it doesn't get hot, and then you just have a thing that because the hydrogen will rise, and so it'll automatically go to the top, and then the oxygen kind of settles, and you got to be careful, right? Because you wouldn't want to light that'll blow up or whatever. And so it's really about just separating it.
The ones I've seen that's kind of like the positive were the ones that separated, because like the ones for the cars I've seen, they kind of use both the hydrogen and the oxygen.
Yeah, they mix the two back together as a gas, and usually it's like 2 parts hydrogen to 1 part oxygen. And you can literally you can kind of just run a regular engine off of it. It's just there's a few issues with it, but like you could develop that to be not a problem or whatever. Well, like when I was in college, I was told that was the future of it. Like it was going to be hydrogen powered cars. The problem is hydrogen is highly flammable and has to be compressed, and compressed hydrogen is dangerous.
Yeah. So, but I've seen some guy do it with a rice cooker where he could get enough pressure to run his car. But yeah, as long as you don't let it, as long as you're letting it, there's an outlet for it. You're not containing it. You're just using it on demand, and then you can just flip the switch when you're done using it, and then you're not making any more hydrogen. So then it makes it safe.
One of the issues is that like my friend was actually he's a mechanical engineer. He was actually developing it with a patent with one of the professors at the College of Walla Walla, and like they were trying to sell it, and like it was what it was going to be. It was more sensible to like use on semi trucks to save gas mileage. So it was like it would be they were testing it, and like it was being so you can use it as an additive too to like reduce your fuel and exhaust.
You can buy them online for like $100, 100 maybe $200 now because everything went up. But yeah, what you're saying where you use it as
you use it as it produces it. So that's the main issue. Like that you can try to get away with to sell it as a product is that if you have it in such a way where it's an additive and that you're using it as is what they're figuring out is like how much amperage and voltage to run to keep it running properly, and then how to monitor that or have it run off the engine to like raise and lower that accordingly, right, to how your car is running, and then so that it's actually making a difference and using it and making it as you need it so that it's not storing or backing up, because that's the main issue is like if something goes wrong, like, and it fills up and it could be like a fire hazard. And then they were the only way to make sense of it as a large production industry for cars would be to like, or the only serious way that someone's tried to, to make it feasible, and it would require all sorts of infrastructure of like hydrogen production and whatnot, right? But like the best way they could do it would be they were looking at compressed hydrogen cells, fuel cells. That's almost like then they got to figure out a way to keep it safe, right? But it is way better. But they could do it now. I mean, it's just not really feasible for mass production. And
they could do it, but they don't want to.
Of course, they exist.
It's gonna demolish the oil industry, and they pretty much want us so dependent on that. So they're gonna tell you everything to suppress something like that.
Well, yeah, when they invented cars, the first car was a steam engine, right? And they work pretty good. Yeah. They just have to. You have to like you can't get in them and go, right? They have to warm up the whatever you call it, the
water, the steam,
it's called like they're in big old industrial boiler. It's like boiler, and like they so that's the only downside, but it's like more efficient and like they actually run really good and they have a good power ratio. But that was like the first vehicle, and then they invented electrical cars too, because Tesla had invented the electric motor. We still use the basic kind. We have like some better like advances and stuff, but it's still the same concept. We're just using his same electric motor invention, and we had those too, and they have advantages as well, right? The reason I think, and it makes sense, is that so right around that time we didn't have oil, like it didn't exist in the sense of like we understood how to use it, right? So like for lamps and things that were like would burn for light or heat,
they were using like whale blubber and stuff like that, and some other things too. But like, so it was like getting like they were over killing like whales and stuff, right? And they were like there wasn't as many whales, and it was the production and then the people needing the product was going up and up and up, like and then they like basically like what he discovered oil, right? And Rockefeller really just he was just the guy who like I'm sure he was evil in all sorts of ways, but I don't think it was necessarily like I mean you could think of it as like a spiritual thing, but like you could also argue that like oil has like made the world like it fueled the industrial revolution essentially. And so the only reason oil car or gasoline cars maybe that was it. Maybe they already had the oil going or whatever, but like they mass producing gasoline because they were discovering so much oil. And so it was literally because gas was so cheap because it was so abundant at that time that gas vehicles are what actually became the market. And then it grew, and then it's like, and just it's only now that electric vehicles can like compete because fuel is such a huge industry because it provided lots of jobs though, right? It like fueled a large part of America growing or whatever, so that we have it as good as we do in a certain sense, right? Like you can argue that it's not necessarily good, but there's aspects of it like that, like. In my mind, like I look at it more like this, and like as far as like evil and stuff like that, like everybody's potentially is evil. Like the poor guy down your street might be evil, like, and then when you get lots and lots of money, and it just kind of fuels that whole thing of like power and money, and then like you get a few people that are particularly evil that get rich, and that's really what's going on. And then like Satan controls all evil people, really. I would say. Do you guys think that's wrong, or do you think there's some? But there's advantages to it too.
I think Rockefeller was kind of like the Bill Gates of today, where he definitely he was taking direct orders from Satan because this guy monopolized not only the oil, he monopolizes the education, he monopolizes the big pharma concept comes from him because what he did was he reverse engineered the medical the natural cures, what you would call the Eastern medicine versus Western medicine. He's the one that came up with all that. So there's actually a lot of good documentaries on how this guy became. That's why he's known as the father of monopolies. And I would say he definitely had direct contact with Satan, where he's going to these places like the Bohemian Grove and whatever they had back in those days. I don't know what they had back in those days, but I would say he was definitely part of some type of satanic cult, and that's just my speculation. But
yeah, that's possible. I'm not saying that's not possible.
This guy had all the money in the world already. There was no need for him to go monopolize the media. He monopolizes the media. He wants to get rid of natural cures and make so he can reverse engineer from his oil byproducts.
Aren't you glad that we have like that? Aren't you glad though that we have? I mean, there's some medicine breakthroughs though. Like I agree, big pharma is totally corrupt.
The only medical breakthroughs are through machinery, right? Like they can cut us open and stuff like that. But as far as whatever drugs you're taking, these people are so corrupt, bro. Where people have came out with cancer cures and they'll kill them. So many homeopathic doctors have been murdered, just like this guy Stanley Meyer got murdered because he was coming up. He was a Christian dude, the Stanley Meyer guy. He didn't want to sell his invention to the government or to any of these corporations. They offered them millions of dollars, but he decided not to. He wanted to kind of like Tesla, where he wanted to give it to the people for free. That way, it could be better for the wellness of mankind. That's what he said. If you ever watch this 30-minute documentary, and then they kill him, bro. So it's the same thing with all these people, bro.
Yo, people kill people all the time. I'm just saying, like, these people are just high profile because they're really rich, and really rich people like get power hungry. But I think anybody's susceptible to that. I mean, people will mistreat people like in all sorts of classes. I'm just saying, like, the rich people are just particularly evil because they have lots of money and they can do more disgusting things with it. If they're particularly evil, I think a lot of times people mean well, like in certain circumstances. Like everybody fights evil in their heart, I think, and so like I think Bill Gates probably has some nasty stuff in his closet, but I don't think he's necessarily any more evil than the next guy might be. Like he just has money. But like I think he's also attempted to actually do good, and sometimes that just does wrong. Sometimes if you're wrong and
What
you try to do something.
what has he done that's good, bro? He has done nothing good.
He's giving away all his money to help people like survive in places. So like I don't know. That could be wrong or whatever. But I mean, there's lots of documentation.
This
I'm
the
not
guy-
saying he's
this
a
the
good
guy that
guy.
went
I'm
to
saying,
court.
The Xbox, dude. What are you on something?
No, I'm
I
saying
know,
this,
dude.
yeah, but this the guy that went to court. He literally goes to court. They take him to court because he's got all these shady dealings where he's monopolizing.
Dude, I
the
think he had
computer
sex with
internet
underage
stuff.
girls and with Epstein. Don't get me wrong,
Right,
but
and
I'm just
he's
saying,
on the
don't forget,
log for
sin crouches
Epstein.
at your door too. Sin crouches at your door too.
Say what?
I said sin crouches at every man's door.
Yeah, but nah, but at this point, bro, it comes a point where these people just sell their soul to Satan, and they're bound to do whatever he tells them to do. And
Maybe,
like,
but maybe not. Maybe
this guy.
Satan's selling his.
Listen
trying
to
to
this,
get everybody.
Jamie. Imagine this guy like Rockefeller and Bill Gates, right? They're already millionaires. They're already been the richest mans in the world already. And then they're gonna decide to, like, this Bill Gates guy. He's already the richest guy in the world. Now he's gonna go ahead and patent viruses, and then he patents vaccines.
I think he thinks it's going to help people. I think he's just wrong. But dude, you know he's
working for
he made
Satan,
dude,
bro.
dude, get this. Do you know he made a promise with a bunch of other billionaires promise with him that they would make sure they literally are giving away all their money before they die, like to different charities and stuff too. Do you know that? They have like a whole institute that gives away money
That
to
video,
research.
I want to see the audio.
Jamie,
Pull up that
you're not
audio.
trying to defend these guys, are you?
I know, right?
Sounds like
Pull up that audio. Hey,
No, but I don't think they're necessarily demons either. I think they're just wrong about a lot of. I disagree with a lot of their ideas too. And I
You
let
don't
me
think
see-
they're
let me-
murdering
let me see
psycho
this
cops?
audio. Let me see
not
this audio of Bill
necessarily.
Gates.
Not necessarily.
You have
I don't
audio.
know. I'm careful
You
about
have
that.
audio
I'm
proof
careful
of
about
this
that.
guy saying he's going to give away all his money before he dies. I want to see the audio proof of this.
I'll see if I can find it. Well, he's already doing it. Is what I'm saying. And I know people that are involved with
Hey.
people who are involved in charity type things that are meant to help people that he's given money to.
How about this, Jamie? Tell me, how come he just became the?
I'm not defending him. I don't know, and I think a lot of his ideas could do a lot of harm too. Like his thinking, I think it's wrong.
Well, tell me how.
And I think he's probably a pervert or something too. I don't even know. But I don't necessarily think he's like working with Satan directly or something. That's all I'm saying. I don't know.
Working with Satan directly, bro. But anyway,
Well, so are we every time we sin.
Not that directly, bro. But tell me, have you heard that he owns he's the number one farm owner of land in the United States.
Oh yeah, his GMO thing. I'm skeptical of that too. Like, I think GMOs
he's
and
part
all
of this
that.
monopoly. He's part of the B system, bro. He's the B system.
Yeah, but dude, everybody invests their money. Why wouldn't you?
Bro, but when you already have all the money in the world, you were the richest man in the world. Like, what's the purpose of going out to
Well, because that's the nature of money. It's the nature of money. You
at
get
some
more, and
point-
then you think you're somebody special, and then maybe
at
you
some
are.
point
Even.
you would think like, okay, I got enough. I got enough for my family, my friends.
Yeah,
No,
but you go.
let me go buy all the money. Let me go.
Well, everybody's got to live for something, bro.
Let me go buy all the vaccine. Let me buy these virus patents and let me go invest in cryptocurrency. Now he has the patent 2020-0606.
Oh, he won't buy any crypto. He's against it. I read anyway.
Well,
that
explain to me,
he
Pat.
thinks it's a sham, and so he won't invest in it because he thinks it's bad for the economy.
Well, why did he patent 20? What's the patent 2020-060606 for then, Jamie?
I'd have to see it.
Check it out. Look it up.
I think Jamie's point is that he don't know. You're basically, Iger, you're selling certainty, and Jamie is selling doubt.
Yeah, well, I just like to remind
pull it
people
up for
that
you, bro.
evil crouches at your door as well, and like he may be particularly evil or not, but there's reasons to think he's not totally depraved, like some like just wants to kill people. I don't think that's the case. I think he thinks he's helping people. I think he's probably like every other human. And he does despicable things when no one's looking, sort of thing too. Like, and he probably thinks he's somebody special deep down, because he's made all this money, and like, what else are you gonna do when you have all that money and you don't live for God? You're gonna think you're kind of important in some way, and like you'll actually gonna help people because you got it figured out. So like, I think he really thinks that like the pandemic was an emergency, and that he can help, and like he's got stuff wrong, but he thinks he's helping. That's what I think, honestly.
Do you think there's
Here's
any
my
chance
thing,
that
though,
that
is
he's
like,
behind the people that? Do you think there's any chance that he's with the people that actually released the pandemic upon us? That way he can make money off the
No,
vaccine.
I doubt that would. You'd have to have some serious evidence to think he caused it.
Okay.
I think
Well,
I
how
think
about
the
this?
Chinese did.
Well, how about this? Can you explain to me patent 2020-060606, right? Which is patented by Microsoft, and crazy number that they picked for this patent, but it's for a cryptocurrency system using body activity data. Like, doesn't that sound like the mark of the beast to you, or
Sounds like a
what
distraction.
do you think? What do you
Sounds
make
like
of
a
that?
distraction from what's being taught
A
in the Bible,
distraction.
if I'm honest. In this sense,
Well,
like
I'm saying, like,
that may be a coincidence, but like to me, the 666 in the Bible is to help. Is given in the Bible so that we can identify the the leader or whatever, and I don't think he qualifies. So I think some people use that stuff just to get people riled up and get media attention. I don't think it necessarily means they're actually worshiping the devil, although everybody is who doesn't know God. They're worshiping Satan because they worship themselves in a sense, right? But like, I don't know about that stuff. Sometimes I think it's just people trolling people. But like, it's a distraction in the sense that like, look, sin is like
this is,
not
I mean,
having God on your side is the problem. It's not, imagining people, like doing seances or whatever in the back room. It's just like it's a really just, the problem's way more subtle than
well,
that.
if you want to look into it, bro, all you got to do is Google up patent 2020.
I will. It's interesting. Yeah,
And
here's my thing,
it's not a
Jamie.
conspiracy
sparks my
website.
attention.
It's not a conspiracy
If
website.
Bill Nye,
It's just a patent
what is this?
website. Like you can go over the patent itself, but basically he wants to connect people to and cryptocurrency to people. So you could go over the stuff yourself. But whatever. It's just there,
Well, if Bill Gates is not a psychopath serving Satan, Jamie, I'm wondering who you think is.
Well, I mean, I would say on far as that goes, it could be true. In like a sense, like, I mean, every false doctrine that Christians hold is from Satan. Like, does that mean they're serving Satan? Kind of, right? Like one of us is wrong about this or that doctrine. And so like whoever's wrong is promulgating Satan. Like, shouldn't that not be the case? Like, it gets complicated when you start like breaking it down. Like, in a way,
No,
yes.
that defies
Anything
logic,
against God.
like I said.
Well, I know I'm agreeing with you to a certain level. Like, it's
No,
just like,
because I'm not out there monopolizing things. I'm not even committing one thing that's worthy of death, not on a general basis, anyways. And these brute beasts are out there sucking the blood out of children on a daily basis, murdering 3,000 babies a day, or at least they used to be before a certain law was overturned. I mean, they have no heart, no conscience.
yeah, stuff like that could be going on. I don't say it's not possible. I haven't seen the evidence. That's all. And I just want to
there's
emphasize
evidence.
that.
John Wayne Gacy, they found over, 13 or something young teenage boys, their skulls under his face.
I'm not saying people like that don't exist. I know they do.
You said you haven't seen the evidence. I gave you some just now.
Yeah, I know. I said that person was depraved. They found that stuff. I agree. Like, I'm just saying, I don't know about Bill Gates. I think he's probably a rich asshole. I think he's a rich asshole who gets stuff wrong, and you want to call that like say him. I don't think he literally talks to Satan, is what I'm saying. I think he just is a human that's probably corrupt and like anybody would be. And as you get richer, you can do more disgusting things. But like, he may actually think he's doing good. I suspect he does, I guess, is what I'm saying. But I'm not saying the outcome isn't bad, or the wiles of Satan in the world or whatever. I'm not sure it's that extravagant or whatever. I think he might actually think he's doing good, and he just doesn't. He's not.
I think he's going to roast in hell with Martin Luther King and some other people.
Probably, unless he repents.
Put him in there, but
he could still be saved, couldn't he? You think he could be saved, or is he a reprobate?
Yeah,
I don't know what your position is.
while he stands. He might as well put a bullet in his own head.
Man,
That
I
might
have another
be
question.
helpful or not. I don't know. Depends where his money would go.
Jamie,
What?
I don't know if I ever asked you, but
I haven't looked at this much. I'm not trying to defend the guy. I don't think he's doing
you did a
good
great
stuff.
job defending him, but we're
Shut
gonna,
up.
you know,
I
I'm
just
saying we're
look.
gonna move on. We're gonna move on. But like, did you get the vaccine, bro, or no?
No.
Okay, I was just checking. I didn't know if you had or not.
I'll tell you this. I know, or a pastor I knew like 15 years ago. I lived near I've worked at Microsoft as a painter, but not. But there was a story he was told because his cousin, my pastor's nephew's wife, worked for the Gates Foundation as a where they're literally just giving away money to charity, and they have like an organization that just decides where money goes out to different people to like where they decide to give away money like to help. If you look into the Gates Foundation and what they're doing, like, you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. Like,
The illusion behind that, though. I'm a good person. Look at all the money that I give.
I got another one there.
Practice.
Well, no, right. It could be a distraction, but I'm saying it exists. Like, it's not all evil. Like, their money goes to people.
Can I share my screen again, Chris?
It's all wicked, dude. I mean, it's like the Catholic Church have been known for child molestation since they've existed, and yet they all still keep their jobs.
Yeah, and they probably help old ladies across the street still too, right? It's complicated.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is
wait.
This is the
I got
topic,
another
right? My friends. Let me tell you the story. Let me tell you the story though. I didn't get to it real quick. So he worked for the foundation, right? One day, Bill Gates' wife's car broke down on the side of I-5, and because she had a flat tire, right? Some dude, random guy, didn't know who she was, stopped to help her because she was on the freeway and her tire was flat and she didn't know how to change it, right? So he stops to just help a random person with a flat tire on the highway, right? He does that. Doesn't know who she is. The next day, his mortgage was paid off.
All right.
That proves Bill Gates is a lovely person and he really cares about you.
Yeah. But check this out. Speaking of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, there's something called Event 201, right? So a lot of I put it wrong. Which comes right up, but it's Event 201, and you can just put that up. It should come out. And so check this out, bro. In October of 2019, right before this all happened, and this is literally on the website. So I'm just gonna go to the website themselves. This Center for Health Security. They kind of do like simulations, right? So they have this simulation of what would happen if there's a virus outbreak, a coronavirus outbreak at that. And yeah, it's called Event 201. Comes right up, first search result. And you could go through there and you could check out their videos. And they pretty much lined up everything that's been going on for the last 2 years, word for word, even to the people distrust, the people rioting, the economies. Obviously, if they're going to be shut down and social distancing, like they already had all this planned out, bro. Like, I mean, I don't know how else to tell you, Jamie, but this guy's working with Satan. Like, they're holding hands together and they're probably cuddling at night. All right, I yield. I'm going off the deep end, bro.
Someone say spooning with the devil. Or what do they call that?
Spooning with the devil.
Yeah, spooning with the devil. Or riding with the devil. There was an AC/DC song or something where it's like running with the devil.
Right here is just so you
Van Halen.
Okay, but here's the problem, buddy. Here's the problem about this.
Scroll to the bottom.
Bill Gates has been talking about how we're due for a pandemic, just statistically speaking. Pandemics happen in history with a recorded history, right? And he was right to predict it. You know why? Because he's got lots of money and smart people running simulations at what that would look like if there was a pandemic under our society with the population levels we have. That's not an amazing prediction or any reason to think that means he started the pandemic. There's no evidence for that. People were interviewing him about this, the fact that he predicted it. And it's not that amazing of a prediction in a certain sense, right? If you have money going towards, because he was like, man, you can look at the science in the recorded history and go, we haven't had a pandemic for a long time. That's kind of weird. Like, we're probably going to have one because of just like you can even point to genetic entropy, like it's going to suggest that these things are going to happen because things mutate to some on some level, right? And then they become, that's how mad cow disease happened, like it naturally, right? And so like to predict it is just like, I think he was just actually just thinking smart, and he was right. And he got kudos for that. I don't like the way they handled it or how they rushed into it, but like it was a desperate situation because like, you know, if you have an old parent, you know, that's like could die from it, you don't want them to get sick. I wanted my parents to get it because you know, if it was safe, you know, they didn't, and they got the coronavirus, and they got really sick, and then they got better though. It wasn't as bad as they said, as we would have thought, right? But they got really sick. Where if they'd gotten any sicker, I would have had to take them to the hospital, like the emergency room. They were like right at the verge of like their fevers were really high, but then it subsided and went away, right? And I got it too, and it wasn't that bad for me, but you know, so I don't need to get. I didn't really. We didn't want to get the. None of my family would have gotten the you know, antivirus or whatever, but we got it anyways. We got sick. And so we're not for it. I'm not like saying it's good and all that necessarily. I'm just saying, you know, I don't think it was like, I don't think it was a way to like trying to kill everybody. It didn't do very well. If you ask me, killing anybody, they can make a virus way worse than that. I think it was just kind of like a mistake from being careless with doing military like research, and they weren't careful about it. And then they tried to cover it up in China or whatever. And then it became an issue, and then they blew it. You know, they made the way they ran statistics on how people died was all wrong, and so they were making it sound way worse than it really actually was. And then they rushed to a thing because it could be bad. It could have been bad, I think. I mean, because of genetic entropy. Like, I expect there to be something like that will happen before the end of days, right? So, like,
I got one more.
I don't have to blame anybody for it. So I don't know. It seems reasonable to me to think that he was just running simulations on what a population of a pandemic would look like. So, and he was right. That's not evidence that he committed.
If his goal, okay, let me ask you: if his goal is to sell vaccines, do you think there's a possibility that he's the one that created the virus? That's kind of what he went to court for, because he was creating computer viruses and then selling the antiviruses. Now he's in the vaccine industry. So he's creating. He owns a bunch of patents for viruses already, and
yeah, sure.
Also, he owns a bunch of patents for vaccines. So do you see a correlation there? Like, do you see it?
Yeah, but that's your problem. That's the flat Earth issue. You're making too much of correlation.
I didn't even say flat Earth at once, bro. I'm talking about the.
I know, but it's that
order. I'm talking about the Illuminati, the synagogue of Satan. I'm not talking about the.
I know. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying. I think.
Well, I didn't call you any names. Like,
I didn't call you any names either.
Yeah, but I mean,
it was an ad hom, Jamie. Maybe a little ad hom.
No, it wasn't. I'm saying it's not meant to be an ad hom. I'm saying if you make correlations. No, it isn't. I'm not trying to be mean at all. I'm just saying you got to be careful when you think things correlate without proper evidence. That's all I'm saying. Like, because you know, look. I'm trying to be conciliatory here. You're right. Like, there's possibility of there being a relation, but like but I would say it's a remote like there's better explanations for like his predicting it. Like, yeah, the more things that line up, you could start thinking maybe there's something to this. I don't know all the facts. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying you got to be careful. That's all I'm saying. Don't make too much of a correlation, because it doesn't. There's lots of factors going on. That's all I mean to say. And to me, that's the problem with assuming flat Earth is true based on certain aspects, which are interesting and things to look at. And I think it's a good exercise in a certain level, right? But I think you got to be careful presuming the answer from correlation. You got to be careful of that. It's a common thing that anybody can do. You know, it's like, you know, the 5G. I could give you one more example, then I'll shut up. 5G. People were saying, you know, like there's this correlation with like where they were putting up 5G towers, right, in population centers, and then people were getting the virus. And so there was this big thing like that the 5G towers were causing coronavirus at first, right? Okay, so that sounds fishy, right? Like maybe that's true, right? Well, here's the thing. Here's a better explanation. If you're going to be putting up 5G towers for a new 5G system to cover your network for your phone, you're going to start where people are the densest in population, right? Because it's going to serve the most bang for your buck for your customers to put the 5G where the population is the heaviest. Well, the same place that's true is going to be the same place where it's going to spread way faster.
California?
Right. So that's correlation, but it's not.
California?
Right, because you're going to start where the highest, densest population is to get the most customers for your each tower. And so, likewise, transmission of sickness is going to happen in high population places. So there's no reason without more evidence to say that they're correlated, but it's a mistake you're going to make if you think correlation equals causation. That's what I'm saying. Sorry, I'll shut up.
All right. But yeah, so you're saying there's definitely no correlation. Like, okay, I got something. I'm pretty sure I showed you this before.
Not definitely. That's key, though. Not
radio,
definitely.
And I'm not gonna say all the cases, especially now when people been getting people been getting what you called it earlier? What you said earlier? People been taking the antivirus, so God knows what's in the antivirus, right? And already there's so many problems like that they'll admit themselves listed as side effects like myocarditis, pericarditis, Bell's palsy. So there's already so many problems with it, but God knows what else is in there. But so now they could possibly be spreading it through there. Plus, we got like all types of food and air stuff that they spray on the air anyway. So. But yeah, you can look at the symptoms of radio frequency poisoning, and you probably can't see it, but I'll just read it for you here at the bottom right. Bronchitis, pneumonia, inflated sinuses, chest pain, pressure, heart arrhythmia, heart palpitations, and this is just stuff that's been known already for a long time. So could it be like you're getting too much radiation and maybe you get sick? Yeah, obviously. The symptoms of electromagnetic microwave illness or whatever, radio frequency poisoning, microwave, all these things are bad for you, bro. They're not from the Garden of Eden. They're not where you're just eating fruits that God grew straight from the tree. So there's a lot of room for error. But what else we got? Man, all types of dizziness, headaches, nausea. Let me see fevers in there. I don't see fever, but yeah. So definitely there could be a correlation with 5G and people getting sick. And I'll tell you, when I first started seeing the towers here where I live was right when we got locked down, the first day. The next day I went to drive around to the grocery store, and there was one radio tower, and the next day another radio tower. That's when I first started seeing them here. But in places like New York and California, they probably started putting them before that. Also, 5G has been used as a military weapon for a long time. You could just look up anywhere on Google 5G military weapon, and they've been using it to the point that in the Iraq War, they got something called military weapons. Hold on, they got something that they call voice of God, where they could even make you hear voices inside of your head. They could also use it to like burn you and just make you disperse the crowd. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of applications for 5G, bro. All right, yo.
All right, back on topic.
Antiquitech.
This is a temple carved in the side of a mountain. Now, how do you accomplish that? Because if you make a mistake, not like you haven't erased.
I do want to say, sorry, Jamie Russell. I'm sorry I went off on you, man. I do appreciate your company and thank you for being here. And I'm sorry I went all, flat.
No worries.
Whatever.
It's fine.
But it's not just the flatters, bro. It's more. It's the monopolies. It's the the synagogue of Satan. It's the New World Order. The globalists. This was getting to me. It's not just that they lied to us about what's good for us. It's also a lot of stuff. All right, sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think 5G it could be tested more, but I am skeptical that it could do much. But I know they use it like that you're saying. I just think they pump way more energy in it to accomplish that or whatever. But yeah, I think I saw some evidence that suggested they haven't totally done good enough studies on 5G, because anything that can hurt you pumped up with lots of energy, like they use in the military. Like the question then remains, that is the case, and it is a rather high frequency compared to like past radiomagnetic, radiation that they use for things. And But it is a very low amount compared to what it bombards us every day already anyway. So the question is, whatever thing you might be able to detect from a study of like how long-term effects or whatever, it would be so minute likely compared to what other studies they've done and the energy amount or whatever. It is higher, and so that's why they ought to do more studies. But like, you know, everything affects you a little bit in a certain sense, right? Like maybe they used to say that about cell phones, right? You're putting your cell phone to your ear or your face all day is probably worse than just as bad, So it's kind of like you give and take,
like
right?
higher
Running
frequencies.
gasoline cars is bad for you, right? The fumes. But like the question is it worth it? Is it worth the advancement of technology to have what, like if we're already becoming poisoned by all sorts of other stuff and it's really minute, like we could lower the speed limit to like 10 miles an hour everywhere too, and then less people would die, But like there is some give and take there, is macabre as that sounds. Sorry, I'm done. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying none of that stuff is real. I'm not saying it's all fake. I'm just saying, maybe it's easy to get exaggerated with it a little bit. I don't, maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, I'm not making any of my own claims. I'm just reading what's online. You know what I mean? Well, yeah. Anyways, moving on. Antiquitech. Chris, you're on Antiquity.
This is another little village. Oh, here it is. Yeah. I don't know if you can see that. Probably not. Let's see. There we go. No, not good. All right. Well, there's multiple examples in the world of buildings, temples, okay, carved into the side of a mountain. You cannot make a mistake when you're drawing. When your canvas is a mountain, you can't make a mistake, okay? You don't have an eraser. You can't just add more mountain, okay? So if you're like the Hindus, were carving entire temples into a mountain. So were the ancient Americans, okay? So there's multiple pictures in this magazine, Time Magazine, Ancient American Civilizations, at least 2 examples of buildings carved into a mountain by ancient South Americans. And again, you can't make a mistake. When you're doing what do they call it? The relief carving, like Jamie said in the comment section, if that's the technical term for it, you can't make a mistake. You don't have an eraser when your canvas is a stone block. So you have to be an expert at what you're doing before you start the project. And everybody that's working on it has to be a master stonemason if you're carving a temple into the side of a mountain, like the ancient Americans were doing, the Hindus, the Europeans, Africans, what have you. They all did it, underground civilizations, underground bunkers, that go down, even several miles in some instances, or at least several hundred feet into the ground. And then there's like elaborate chambers and tunnels that just go on for days. So how are they doing all that?
Actually,
it's not the jack.
I just
hacksaw.
My bad.
Go ahead.
I just looked at the time, man, and I got to bow out. So I hope you guys have a great stream together. Chris, always a pleasure to see you. Jamie, it's also a pleasure to see you, man. If you wouldn't have came in, I wouldn't have gone off on that great 5G rant and that great Rockefeller, Bill Gates rant. So thank you also for joining, bro. Because it was nice to get some of that stuff out of my chest. So thank you guys for letting me on. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. We'll be me and Chris got a thing scheduled for tomorrow. Jamie, if you want to come back. But God bless y'all and have a good night. Peace.
All right, later, Edgar. See you tomorrow. There's some other examples of, like pyramids and stuff that they built. But before they built multiple buildings, multiple stone buildings in an area, they would actually smooth out the entire landmass. So like even out the area, so it's a flat platform they can build something upon. So that's an amazing feat of engineering itself. It's not like a whiteboard where you can just wipe it off. I mean, you need bulldozers and all kinds of stuff to do this today. How did they do that? How did they level out an entire plane as ancients?
Exactly. Hey, I could stream this on my channel, and then that might help you get some more viewers too. If you want, just let me know sometime, anytime.
Oh yeah, I'd appreciate any of the help that I can get, Jamie. Your channel does better than mine. Probably any channel does better than mine because I don't know.
Well, you gotta like. I think is what helps is like visiting other channels and like getting to know some people, and then like because I always like when people come on my channel, I'll show the audience their channel or whatever, and like even just like going around to other channels, like it'll connect. I think that helps connect people that are like in there with like wherever you go, and they start to like
Yeah.
correlate a little bit, and that can help too. Like I've noticed that, like because I spent. It's not like my channel is big or anything, but it has grown a little faster than other small channels just because I think I like did a lot of hanging out in other places or whatever, and people get to know who you are a little bit.
Oh,
But
yeah,
you're
you
doing
do
that.
so good on your stuff. I do watch your channel, by the way, Jamie.
Well, you can come in anytime, man. You're welcome anytime.
Yeah, I know. A lot of times there's like a lot of people in there, so if I don't get in
Yeah.
early, I often don't join streams like that.
Yeah. I get on my rants or whatever about stuff, but like when people are like cool, like I don't do. I'm not gonna like come at people or whatever if they disagree with me. It's just I'm gonna say what I think, and then that's what you do on your channel, I guess. And then we all like I like learning from different people, so everybody has something to contribute. Like even if you think they're wrong about something, like I've learned stuff from like I've talked to one guy who's a universalist, and like I have struggle with even being friendly with him because it's like, you know, I'm so against what he's teaching, and I think it's so damaging in a lot of ways, right? But like, I'm not sure how to deal with that sort of thing all the time. Like, if someone's cool, then
what are you teaching?
universalism.
Like
I
we
talk to
should
him and I give him
one church,
like
and
everybody's saved in the end. So like,
Funny.
and like the things they say, like I'll oppose him constantly, but like when I'm talking to him, I'm gonna like, he's a decent person, like he's just wrong, but like, and he's doing damage, but like, so is everybody that's wrong about anything as far as theology goes. So
yeah, but some
that
people
one's
do more damage than others, Jamie.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the struggle for me. Like, I don't know. I just try to like, I don't
That's
know.
one of those things that sounds good from the pulpit, but it's really bad theology.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's so many reasons why it doesn't work, and it makes a mess of the Bible. And so it really irritates me when people try to, muster the Bible for their view like that. But then they come up with all these ways to get out of other verses. And it's like, look, are you going to take the whole book or not? Because that's my feeling anyway. It's just like, don't act like the Bible's teaching it and then pretend like the other verses don't exist. And so it's just like, there's room to have disagreement and stuff, and people should just be not be careless about it. I just think it's a little dishonest to say the Bible's teaching that. It's like one thing if you want to say the Bible's like, when you back them into a corner, they'll basically admit that they're not inerrantists, and maybe some stuff isn't legit or whatever, and that's like, well, let's stop using it.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to get at people like that. Strange, bizarre doctrines are always a challenge if the person's already studied it and convinced. So that's like anything, though. If somebody's already done the research and they have evidence against your position, they know all of your arguments, that kind of tells you that person has made their decision, and you probably shouldn't try to convert them. Unless you're talking about the gospel, unless you're trying to get them saved from hell, I wouldn't waste your time unless you're doing it for educational purposes, like a general discussion with multiple people.
I understand why a Baptist disagrees with me, but a Universalist, it just feels dishonest. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like they're not like, I know why somebody disagrees with me on hell or this or that or whatever. Like, I know I'm genuine about what I think it means to teach or whatever, but like, I understand where like someone like yours coming from. And so like,
I know you're sincere, and like, and so it's, you know, and I don't like patronizing people either. But my point is like the universalists, they kind of have to like, they're either totally like just, you know, like they want to teach it, but then when it comes down to it, they can't use the Bible for it, or they have to poo-poo it away or whatever. And it's just like there's something about that that's makes it easier to like be mad at them or whatever. But
Does he want to do a debate? You should ask him.
I don't think he's into that. I have encouraged him to like to if he's serious about like thinking the Bible's this is true, but you know like it's often a bunch of like divorced older men that like get in these groups, you know, like I there's a sense where I can see where they're coming from, like, but you got to take it seriously, like when you're trying to teach the Bible to like the public.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, if I'm not sure about something, I'm not gonna like be a hard ass about it. Like if I feel convicted about something from scripture, then I'll be more confident about it. But like a lot of people act really confident. It seems to me anyway that shouldn't be right, and they act like they're right. It's just like, why don't you, you know, it's one thing to be like a hopeful universalist because like it would be theoretically possible, perhaps like that God could convince people to believe or something some way, but like to just say fiat, it just disregards sin too much and makes God the author of evil essentially, and it has no purpose. God
I mean,
redeems evil. He doesn't create evil and then redeem it. He redeems it because he gave us freedom to commit it.
when it comes to that, there's two options, just like there is a God or there is no God, there is a hell that lasts forever or there's not a hell that lasts forever. There's not like an in between where everybody gets saved or everybody gets damned. Like it's either one of those positions, I don't think that I could prove it's one or the other, but it's got to be one of those. There ain't no gray
Yeah,
area.
I think. Well, this is where I try to be precise with language. With so like a lot of people that believe what you do, like I would like them to understand that like I'm not denying. I'm like I believe there's a fiery judgment for the lost, and that when they get thrown in there, it's permanent forever. So like in that sense, I agree with the eternal conscious torment. The risk is losing out on eternal life in heaven, you could say, but I still believe it's eternal and permanent, and that it's a judgment, and that there's a fire that kills the person. I just think they die and they remain dead forever. That's how I mean, it's partially because of the way I understand death from the Bible, right? But you don't have to have that understanding to take my interpretation of hell. But they go together. Really, it makes a lot of sense. You don't have to like come up with all these.
Yeah. It
You
makes
know what I
perfect
mean? Like,
sense. I just don't think that it flows together very well logically or
yeah,
compelling.
that's fine. But just realize I believe in eternal hell. Like it is a place you go and it's permanent. I just don't think the person's goes on being consciously alive. I just think they get judged and
Well, then,
they're done forever. So that's all I'm
yeah,
saying.
I know you don't want to be mislabeled. Everlasting punishment. How's that?
Exactly right. It's an everlasting
But
punishment.
then
You
you
get
could
killed
also still say the same. I guess there's really no way out of it. I don't know.
well, my point is that it's still a warning and missing out on eternal life. In my view, universalism is there's a sense that they're like saying the guy I know doesn't say this because he actually agrees with me about death. It's just interesting because I always thought that people would take the idea that you have an immortal soul, and there's a sense where it's like like it seems like the Bible doesn't teach that. So like it seems like God would torture people forever if it's like he had to put them somewhere, then that makes sense to me. But like why not just destroy them after they suffer or whatever? Like I just don't see the point unless and I don't see an immortal soul. But when you're a universalist, is usually going to think they're kind of like going to go with this idea that like, well, God, everybody's immortal, and so eventually they're going to like God's going to allow them to repent. That's often what they say, and I think that what one thing that I agree with that's clear in the Bible with the eternal conscious torment person is that the Bible is teaching that the people that go there are lost for good and that that's permanent. And so when you try to say that that's not the case, then now you're manipulating the Bible on what it's clear about. And what it's clear about is that those who go there are not ever redeemed. It's permanent. And whatever death is, or however you want to define the words, it's permanent and they die and it's not good and they don't get out. That's clear to
Yeah,
me
that's why
anyways.
universalism cannot be true. It cannot be defended honestly.
definitely can't be defended with a clear statement from the Bible, considering the fact there's clear statements in the Bible that say the exact opposite. So if there was a clear statement in the Bible that said everybody's going to get saved, then the Bible wouldn't be true because it'd have a glaring contradiction. But it doesn't. It just says one thing and one thing only. You know, just like Jesus put it. There are those who believed and they're saved, and those who don't believe, they're damned already. While they stand, you're damned. Unless you just do what it takes. You know, it's as simple as getting on a boat to be saved from a global flood. You know, just walk in there. People don't want to do that. And that's why, you know, giving the gospel, like door knocking in a rich area, is rather difficult. They don't want to hear it because they have their Mercedes out in the grass. So they're not really interested in.
Yeah, they don't have a need. They don't think they have a need. That's why Jesus said the rich are hard to save.
Yep.
Not that they can't be saved, not that the money makes them evil, but that they think they're in need of nothing.
Yeah.
But they're tired or they're miserable, naked, and treacherous or whatever, you know. Laodicea. I don't know if he's talking about all people there, or it seems to be talking about. And here we are, rich as a nation in the light of history. Everybody's rich, including the poor. Like when you compare them to history of the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting subject. What does it mean to be poor? Like the poor will be with us forever or whatever. Is that like, what is the Bible saying is poor if you take it literally? It's like, you could take it in a spiritual nature, like they're poor in spirit in the sense of like they need God, but it seems to be fairly literal, like that we should serve the poor, and that means literally clothing the naked and stuff and feeding people who need food. But you could take that as a spiritual idea, but I think it's both kind of, but like, should we really call people in America poor, even the poorest? Like compared to like 100 years ago, like that would be considered rich, right? So like, is the Bible saying poor just means destitute, or are they saying, because you're always going to have a group of people that are the least wealthy in a group, right? So you could call them the poor, but they're really rich by any kind of world historical standard. So what do you think it's more like? I think it's probably more like people who are destitute it's talking about, not just the poorest in your society. It's saying literally destitute, like in need of things that they can't get. Doesn't that seem right to you? I mean, what do you think?
I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. It seems
well, you mean like the poorest people in America, for the most part, are really rich by any kind of world standard or historical standard. They have lots of things. They have cell phones and cars. They might have a crappy apartment compared to everybody else. But does that mean they're poor just because they're less wealthy than the rest of the people in their society? We're a very rich country, right? So when the Bible says like take care of the poor, does that mean take care of the least wealthy people in your society, or does it mean take care of people that are in actual need of things that like they need for survival? You could call wealthy people poor when you, in comparative sense, right, to the other people in their society. They're poor, the poorest group, but they're not necessarily. So because the poor will always be with you, right? Because you could define the poor as just the least wealthy people, but they're not actually in need of anything.
Yeah, that's definitely not the biblical definition of poor. The biblical definition of poor is someone who can't take care of themselves, physically destitute of clothing, shelter, money, and they need somebody else to bail them out. I think that's the biblical definition.
Right, yeah, I agree. But like when they often in America, like when politicians talk about the poor, they just mean the class with the least amount of money in the society. And you know, I'm not saying there aren't destitute people that are out there in America. I'm just saying the poor is like just the lower class of income by like political standards or whatever.
I'll tell you what the Bible doesn't mean by take care of the poor. Go to San Francisco and give people free plastic syringes so that they can do heroin while they stay homeless and do nothing.
Well, how else are they going to get their syringes though, Chris? They need them.
I don't know. I'm just joking. I don't know. I can't. The Bible says that you should leave the outer edges of your vineyard available for the poor. So that's like for scenarios like that. But then you can't put it in a basket and take that with you. You can just only eat off of it. And that's the motivation to work.
Exactly. That's right. That's exactly right.
for your own.
You take what you need, and that's what it's there for, as you need it, like as you pass through or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one. That's a great one. I was just reading something about that today, where one of the laws was saying like leave the edges of your orchards or whatever for
Yeah,
that
we don't.
reason.
I just don't like how America is so compassionate on like homeless people that are intentionally homeless, because that kind of enables society to just go live that kind of a lifestyle. And when you have that kind of a people living in your society, you don't thrive and prosper. You actually end up looking like the homeless person under the bridge. You know, the whole town ends up looking like that. That's why there's feces literally on the streets in San Francisco. You can get an app on your phone.
I worked next to Chaz. Do you remember that Chaz thing in Seattle? Did you hear about that?
Mm-mm.
They took over the police department like a couple of years ago. It was called like, I forget what they called it, but like they literally took over it, and the police department like left the precinct or whatever, and they like, it was like a cordoned off area of Seattle. I worked right next to that area when I was before I moved to Idaho, and like painting this old house or whatever, and the yeah, it's terrible. Like, don't even get me started. They had so much money from like Google and Amazon there in Seattle, and got so much donated money to help the homeless problem. And because of their policies, they could have given every single person that started out being on the street, living on the street. They raised so much money that one year that they could have just handed every single homeless person that was there to start with $50,000 for the year. That's how much money they wasted. And at the end of that money being wasted, it was like $100 million or something, or more than that. At the end of the year, there was more homeless people than they started with. And they spent all the money. They spent all the money. That tells you anything. And they could have given every single homeless person $50,000. That was at the beginning, and there's more at the end.
Yeah, what they done was open up an Al Capone soup kitchen, you know, for more criminals to be created.
Dude, I would watch police sitting there on Mercer Street in downtown Seattle, and there's people shooting up in like groups right on the sidewalk, and the cops parked right there, standing like 10 feet away, and just he's told to let it happen, let him do it, and not arrest him.
Yeah, there was like a shooting here in Oklahoma where they said that the cops were outside of the building, not letting anybody in or out while there were kids in there shooting everybody. They weren't letting people in or out. The cops. Sounds like an inside project to me. Like someone is in on this.
Or sometimes they just don't want to go in because they don't know what's going on. But people were coming to Seattle because of their policies, because they knew they would get help and like could do drugs openly and like just live that way. They need some tough love is what they need.
Yeah, it's just a matter of telling them to go somewhere else, you know, because you can live homeless other places other than, you know, where the specific governor resides. You know, that governor, that sheriff, or whoever can tell you to get your bag. You need to move over here and be homeless and not here. And they don't do that, though. They just let them live in these, you know, San Francisco, if it wasn't for all of the flags and all of the feces and the syringes and the homeless people, it would be a phenomenal city. You know, it is a phenomenal city, even in spite of all of that. So if you just remove that filth, you probably have a pretty good thing going on.
Where do you put them, though? Where do you put them? They finally started doing stuff where they tried to like get people to go home to their families or whatever and stuff like that. Like that would help a little bit, but like it was crazy, dude. People living on the freeway, essentially, like in the little nooks and crannies of the overpasses and stuff, like tents and stuff. Like when I drive into Seattle to work, and they would fill up in the parks full of needles. Because, dude, the reason for needle exchanges, and like, I'm a recovered drug addict, you know, for a long time now, but like, I have a little bit of understanding for some people, like if they get caught up in that or whatever, like there are programs that some people would say were liberal that I like think might be helpful. Like the original needle exchange idea was for like the worst areas, and is what was happening is people are like desperately addicted or whatever, like, you know, for whatever purpose. The point is that they're in that position at this point, right? And it's like you don't want to see like really hardcore diseases just spread because it's like dangerous for the other population for all sorts of reasons, right? Like, so the original needle exchange, like I think it's kind of like a bad idea on one sense, but like there are circumstances where it could be useful because of this. They'll share needles and spread the diseases and stuff, right? So like if like so, it used to be that you'd have to go to a special place, you know, and then give them your used needle, and they would give you one needle, and then dispose of your used needle, right? So it would help keep the streets clean. It would make they'd have to bring their used one to get a new one, so that they could get a needle without having to like, you know, they have so many drug addicts. I can kind of understand that, okay, like because of the spread of disease, and you're making it like they're gonna do it anyway, and so it's kind of just like at least like a band-aid until you can figure it out or something, you know, to stop the spread of like hard, really, you know, deadly disease, right? Well, the problem is pretty soon they just got lazy. They would pretty soon you could just get a needle for free, and then pretty soon like they'd give you like they wouldn't make you exchange your old needle, and so they're basically just giving you needles for free, right? That seems, now you're starting to really for sure be off track. Well, then they would start like going to the areas these people were living with, like where the guy would like come at a time in a truck and like give them out. And then they would just come like deliver bags of needles. And so now they just got this plethora of free needles. They're not exchanging in it. The idea was you exchange one for one, right? So you have a clean one. Now they're just coming and giving them
the old ones
needles.
off the street.
They're everywhere, bro. They're like in the parks. Kids can't use the city parks, and like cops are getting poked by them and stuff. It's just like
Oh my God.
amazing.
That's pathetic. So their solution, because they can't find the person who's pushing the heroin in the streets, is to just give people free needles so that they can leave them all over the park. And it's like, what? What kind of
it's crazy.
country is this?
You wouldn't even believe it if you saw it, honestly. And yeah, the poop thing, like I didn't hear a lot of that about in Seattle, but it was an issue, like because they getting these groups. Luckily in Seattle, the way it's laid out, it's not as bad. Like there's not like a Skid Row per se. There is, but not like San Francisco. But like yeah, they actually had to like there was like they had to put a budget out for the city of like there's this crew of like 3 people that literally have like a special truck for like they pick up shit for a living. Like they just sorry, excuse my language, but like they're like paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to be like a new poop crew, human feces cleanup crew.
Yeah,
because like the bubonic plague was like they like had cases of the bubonic plague, dude, in there.
My God.
Because the rats, you know, they have nowhere to put the garbage. It just kind of like builds up.
Yeah.
No running water, showers. They're all drug addicts. They like shit in their pants. I'm sorry, man. They're just
No, you're fine. Yeah. You speak the truth. It hurts sometimes.
Yeah, it's bad. It's sad. I feel bad for some of the people, but like at the end of the day, most of them are gonna want to stay there. They want to stay. Like they need tough love. They need to like build what do they call that facility where the NAFTA camps or whatever? Throw them in there, make them get clean.
You need a jurisdiction for someone who wants to live like that. You can't necessarily say that you can't like be homeless, but if it's a public park, you can't be homeless in a public park. It's just it's not a place that you live. It's a place that has like a curfew. You got to go home eventually. That's probably why they have curfews set up in some areas, like a mall, for instance. Eventually, it's closing time. You can't live in the mall. What makes you think you could live right outside of the mall? You're still at the mall, like you need to leave. But they don't get it. I don't know. They don't seem to have an answer to how they can legislate that and get the people off the streets.
Yeah,
they're just like, well, I don't know. What are we gonna do?
The thing is, like, they even have places for these people to stay. Like there's a famous place in Pioneer Square in Seattle that like, but they have some rules, but they're pretty lax. But like, you know, obviously you can't do drugs on the premises and stuff like that. And so like, that's why people don't want to go to the beds that they have available, because they're going to bug them about like getting help and stuff. And like, but they'll feed you and give you a bed, but people don't even want to go there because they can't use. And so their solution was like tiny houses, right? Where the person could like have their own little tiny lot with like basically like a smaller than a trailer, you know? And then that was the solution, because there's just so many homeless. They got to put them somewhere, and like they're like, you know, they're like killing the property value, and people's houses are getting broken into, and they're parked everywhere. And so they're trying to like find land in Seattle, right? Which is really valuable, of course. And like,
the city owns different plots of parks and lands, and they want to put like tiny houses there, but none of all the rich people who are so liberal and like, don't want to like be hard on that. But as soon as the people are like parked in front of their house, or they want to build these tiny houses behind their, nearby their place, they're like, no, no, no. And they're like fighting it. Right. So like they like to throw money. They'll throw money and let you tax them up the wazoo. Right. Because then they feel like they can virtue signal like, because they're helping, but they don't really want to help people. They just want to throw their money at it and keep it away from me. They're not really wanting to be charitable. They want to look charitable. It's really funny. They call them NIMBYs, not in my backyard.
Yeah.
They don't, oh yeah, help them, throw all the money at them. We'll pay more if we have to. But as soon as they're trying to fix the problem and like, however they can, right, just to clean up the city streets and stuff, it's like people won't do it, and they'll get lawyers, and like, no, they don't want that near their property because then it brings their property value down and it brings all the homeless near them. Which I can understand that honestly, but like get realistic about it. Like they got to
That's the reason why they like try to support it is because it's not where they are. They're not feeling the effects. So they're like, they just see a homeless person that's in need and they feel sorry for them, so they give money. But they don't understand that those people can develop into criminals and murderers because of the fact that they don't have anything to do and they don't have a purpose for their lives. So that's what happens. You give people free checks like the government likes to do, free money. It doesn't take rocket scientists to figure out that the economy will implode if you do that, if you continue to do that, because you're going to have a gang of thugs, at your front office eventually. And they're going to be taking that money instead of getting it free. Like you want to give people free money. They take advantage. That's what people do, is take advantage. If they don't have to work and you're just going to give them free money, they're going to come at you for more money than what you're giving them. Because if it's going to be free, well, what if you need more than what they're giving, So that's not safe.
Welfare is a nightmare. I mean, it's needed, but it needs to be much stricter or whatever. It's just, there's a place for it, I think, maybe, perhaps, although you could argue not. But, for extreme circumstances. But like, yeah, as soon as you get somebody stuck on that, it's like, that's the problem. If you give them enough to survive, they're stuck because like they can't if they got a job, it wouldn't be much more than getting a similar amount of money without working. So why would you ever go to work to make like almost, the main thing is like the benefits you get is what it really is, because you can go out and like work a full-time job at minimum wage, even a high minimum wage or more even, and work full time and only make a modest sum more than you were getting for free. But then you lose your benefits, like the medical benefits, And so like it keeps people stuck. It keeps people stuck from being able to, go up the ladder or whatever, And so they get stuck on it. And then pretty soon you find out they didn't really need it in the first place, or they don't need it anymore, but they're kind of stuck in that lifestyle. And it's really bad. I've known people like that.
Yeah, it's a problem. We need to get back on topic. And I'm almost done with this believe it or not, the ancient advanced technology. There's top 10 giant discoveries in North America. So I'll read a couple off. This is a book by Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira. Jim Vieira is a stonemason, and Hugh Newman is a private explorer and an author. Been on multiple mainstream TV shows. They actually did a thing on this on National Geographic, I think, where they actually searched for the bones of these giants. They didn't find any, but I got some pictures here that could be compelling. This is one from the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia. I believe these are 8 to 9 feet tall skeletons. And these are the actual, skeletons, and they've set them up on display. So that they call it like giganticism. Like there were some people back then that had like this mutation and it allowed them to grow taller. And so this is what they.
Okay, hey! Can you stop a second? I'm gonna stream this, and then can you show that again? And then I'll put your information in the video or whatever. Okay.
All right, sweet.
I mean, most people aren't gonna like.
The only reason I hadn't done it yet is because it's so late, and so no one's going to really be watching it today. But at least, and then it'll be on my channel, and then I'll put all your info in there. So let me start it real quick. Wait, what's the book called again? What should I call it?
Giants on Record.
Okay.
Jim Vieira, Hugh Newman. This is a book that documents. It's got documents from articles from the old early 1800s or late 1800s rather, and early 1900s. These are news articles that would come out with private or like even professional archaeological digs, and they would document it in the articles and put them out in the newspaper or whatever. And then, old peer-reviewed literature sometimes is used in these, but mostly, news reports that you can find in old, like, libraries and their files or whatever. And so this book is full of them. That's what the whole book is about, is just all of the eyewitness testimonies, archaeological expeditions, photographs.
Wait. I'm going to start it right now. So start over, okay? I'm going to start it. Okay, let me see. How can I signal you? I'll change my screen picture, and that'll tell you it's live. I thought, okay, you can hear me, right? Okay, I'm starting it now. It's live.
All right, so Jim Vieira is a private explorer, been on several mainstream TV programs. Or not Jim Vieira, but Hugh Newman. Jim Vieira is a stonemason, and they've uncovered basically documented several articles from old newspapers and archaeological excavations from the late 1800s and early 1900s of ancient Indian burial mounds that contain entire civilizations of giants of an average 8 to 9 feet tall, all of them. And that would explain the megalithic structures perhaps, and give us insight on why there are these reports of giants. If they're in the ancient world, if there's all of these reports, if there's all of these legends of giants, these like gods, Hercules and Zeus, and you got the Greek gods, and you got the Chinese gods, and you got the Hindu gods, like a million of those. There could be, a truth to the legend, a truth about dragons, a truth about the giants, and that these are actually things that existed, even though they don't exist anymore. It's good evidence. Now, Jim Vieira, who they did the National Geographic special on, they did not find any bones. And other than the ones I'm going to show you, the like photographic evidence, and there is like one finger bone, and then here's the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia. It's actually giants on display there, the skeletons. But they will say that this was a form of giganticism, some kind of mutation that made them taller. But that can only work if you're looking at like an isolated situation. If this is something that's generally happening all over the world, where there are people, multiple people in one graveyard that are giant, well, then you have a global phenomenon. You have something that's normal in the genetics, for people to grow to excessive heights. The Bible says that there were giants in the earth before the flood, and also after the flood, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men and bare children unto them, and the same became men of renown. Could be talking about these giants. So all over ancient North America, there have been burial mounds, that have been excavated and they were excavated in the late 1800s, early 1900s. It's known that they were excavated and then reburied and then kept safe by law. Legislation was put in place to protect the ancient native burial mounds. Still to this day, you cannot do archaeological excavations from them unless you get special permission. But it's known that they excavated them in the past. What is a controversy is whether or not they had uncovered giants. Because if they had, there's no evidence today, no physical evidence of a giant bone, only photographic evidence. And, there's all these eyewitness testimonies. So just because you don't have a bone doesn't necessarily mean that it's not true, because you have the eyewitness testimonies, you have the documentation, the measurements, you have the photographs, and I'm about to show you some of those. So that's something. And the mounds still exist. So there's a potential that you could actually still dig one up if the laws weren't in place forbidding you to enter into the mound. There's some mounds in Oklahoma where I live, in Spiro Mound, Oklahoma. You can go there. Jim Vieira and Hugh Newman, both actually the authors of this book, they went there and they presented them this book, and that guy told them that there was never any giant found there and that he doesn't even know what they were talking about. Owner of the museum. It's ridiculous, okay? Because it was documented. They found that. This is, something that was reported in the news back at that time. So maybe it was there or was not there, but at least he could concede to the fact that, that's what they were, that it was at least talked about, But, when you mention like giants, you go up to a museum and ask them if they've ever had giants or some evidence for any evidence for ancient advanced technology, something that contradicts the status quo, they're going to tell you that they don't know what you're talking about. Like, where did you hear that? Because that's strange. They'll act like they don't know what you're talking about. They do. They're told, they're paid to tell you that they don't know what you're talking about, so that they can keep their jobs. That's why they do it. It's a cover up. People do this, in businesses all the time. They're told to say and not say certain things for the safety of the business. Okay, so if you're going to sell something, if you're going to have a market, well, you don't want any competitors. You need a status quo. You need a common theme for your product. I mean, that's marketing 101. So if you're going to sell science, you don't want something contradicting the status quo. You have to keep it, a certain paradigm so that people will buy it. Because if you have multiple options, then you're not going to gain as much of a profit necessarily. It just depends on what you're selling. Science is a little too controversial to be that divided. People, if you can get people to believe that most of the scientific community agree, they have one consensus on something, well, then they're most likely to purchase all of the popular books and everything else. So it's all connected to make a profit. That's what I think. That's why the Smithsonian is probably responsible for covering these things up. The physical bones probably do exist, but they're not available to us in order to protect the market. It's not even necessarily that these people have an agenda, like even Jamie was saying earlier. They're not necessarily have an agenda to serve Satan, but they just have a market that they have to protect. They have, a business that they have to operate. And you can't just uncover evidence for dinosaurs and man living together, or giants that used to be all over North America, or, machine cutting on the ancient megalithic structures. If you publish stuff like that, well, then you're going to lose money instead of gain money. That's all I'm saying there. So you can take it how you want. Anyways, here's the skeletons I already showed you in the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia. It's a list of 10 discoveries, the giants in West Hickory, Pennsylvania. They said that they found a report of one that was 18 feet tall. And then the smallest one is the Serpent Mount in Ohio at 7 feet tall. There's San Diego, California, 8'4" giant. Here's a giant axe head. There's Hugh Newman there holding the axe. And that is like a 10-pound axe head. Who's swinging an axe with that much weight?
You can pick up a regular axe sometime and swing it, and let me know how you would feel if that just the head alone weighed 10 pounds. It's crazy. This was ancient America, New Hampshire, England, megalithic structures in America. That one was in New York. They put this huge stone and set it on these small stones. This is ancient stonemasonry in America. They say that it was built by like colonists, which is certainly possible. The Romans would have been capable of a feat like this. So it's just providing evidence that the ancients, they have a lot more skill than what the secular scientists or archaeologists mainstream want to give them credit for, just because they want to protect a certain paradigm. And then here's another 10-pound axe head. Okay, there's a giant pipe. Who's smoking a pipe that big? I don't know what they're smoking. Secondly, and then here's a photo of a giant skeleton discovered at Dixon Mounds in Illinois. That one, I don't know how big that was, but 8 to 9 feet tall. Crave Creek Mound in West Virginia. There was the ancient Paleo-Hebrew on this little stone that they found in that mound. So why is there a stone with ancient Hebrew writing in an ancient Indian burial mound? That's significant right there. Here's a finger. You got a normal finger under it, a giant finger above it that's been excavated out of one of these mounds. So there are some fragments of the bones out there. You can read that book and you can make your own decision. But I believe that the Bible says there were giants, there were people living to be nearly 1,000, and there were artificers of brass. They knew how to work with gold, iron, silver, make instruments, construct buildings, stone, carve temples into mountains, all kinds of amazing things, because people were created by God. And we came from a 600-year-old man named Noah, faced a Gilligan's Island situation where you have, a lot of intelligence, but very little resources. And so if you find like an axe head, or if you find a arrowhead, and one of them looks more primitive than the other, that doesn't necessarily mean evolution, like they're getting smarter.
Yeah.
It could mean they're spending more time.
Yep, that's a fallacy that people. That's one of the ones that's so funny. Do you think Noah was bigger too, or not?
Yeah, definitely.
I think people are probably bigger in general. It seems to me, but that's interesting how to work that out regarding seems that the Israelites weren't big, obviously, right? So it must have been, but the earliest men I would think were. But do you think that they were offspring of fallen angels or not? I don't. I'm not. I'm open to either way of looking at it, but I go back and forth.
My theory is that these were saved men that were marrying unsaved women for the intention of producing an excessively tall person. Not like 8 to 9 feet tall. They were going for 14, 15, massive individuals that, and it was probably the women and their wicked fathers, It's all that wicked culture. The Bible says that Solomon went after many wives and even followed after their gods. And Solomon was saved. What's he doing worshiping other gods? Well, because of women. And this is the problem in the Bible with polygamy. It causes serious problems. And it produced, I believe that it's actually what produced the giants. Promiscuous sexual lifestyles of.
I thought that too. Think about if we both are young Earth creationists, so if we have to assume that to get the diversity of man, like the genetic pool would have had to been have attributes that we don't see any longer. So who knows what they could have bred just from breeding humans together if they were doing something in a perverted way, even what you were suggesting. But even the reason they could be remnants of giants is because of
things they were doing through breeding of humans, even, which who knows what could have been possible, like especially if you have all that diversity possible within Adam and Eve, and it's so shortly after that fact. You could have, I mean that's all speculation, of course, but if men were bigger and the gene pool was much stronger, maybe there was more like kind of perverse things you could do with that or something. I have no idea. I'm just speculating, but and then that could have caused some sort of genetic aberration too, like just from the humans, like being more having a stronger genetic, you know, interaction or whatever. Who knows?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Some kind of artificial breeding experiment. You just, you know,
You don't need
you
angels to make the story work. In other words,
yeah. You could get a population of people that are like 7 feet tall just by continually removing the people that aren't 7 feet tall, you know, over a period of several generations, and you could have a bunch of 7-footers. So I think that's what's happening
yeah.
here.
Well, and consider like, you know, maybe from a young Earth view, like potentially like close family inbreeding wasn't necessarily as big of a problem for like disease or whatever like we have today, right? Although we don't know what kind of rules God set for what reasons necessarily, but it seems to me like there had to be some sort of inbreeding of some kind, like from, you know, like people never really think about it. Like if they could have kids faster or something and they live so long, like if you had like, I know this sounds gross and obviously I'm against incest and stuff like that, but like imagine you're living for a long time and you have a sister who's much younger than you, and there's like 50 brothers and sisters that have been born in between you and her, and you've moved on. Like it wouldn't seem the same as like a smaller family that you're like, you know, there would be more distance. Like, and it would only happen, and that would only happen at the very beginning too. Like if they had like say 50
Yeah.
kids over like 200 years, your sister who's like, it would seem like a more distant relative, in other words, than we would, but then it would feel like today in a smaller family as well. And, you know, I'm not saying that, I mean, I'm just trying to think of like, you know, Cain, you know, his wife, who was she, you know, that sort of thing. It's like,
No, yeah,
do
that's
you have
the
thoughts?
incest problem. It's actually based on a straw man, you know, thinking that the way that, you know, things are today is the same way they are in the past, aka genetic mutations. You know, they're assuming that they basically didn't exist, or that they still existed at the time people were living to be nearly 1,000 years old. Like, why would there even be any genetic mutations in the first place? You wouldn't be able to live that
Right.
long.
Right. And if they're having tons of children at first because they're really robust or whatever, I mean, once you, a brother and a sister would have to mate, but they could be like much further apart, and who knows what kind of changes would occur. And then once they have kids, and then their kids are having, you know, relations with, you know, it would be like a cousin or whatever, right? Which, with way more of a population growing much faster, the relation wouldn't seem as close. And if there's no genetic component, there's almost nothing left to. I know that sounds gross, but like, you know what I mean? Like
It
so many
doesn't.
people, there would seem so much more distance. It wouldn't seem the same like it would today at all. At all.
Yeah, you just have to think of the culture, you know, because today there's plenty of people. Back then, you're trying to get people. So what do you think is logical? You know, when there's no one else available, you're not going to report them to the cops because they're doing it too. This is the purpose. You know, you're
Exactly. It
not
just wouldn't be. Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, you know, exactly. Cool,
you're not
man.
marrying your sister because that's the person you wanted to marry necessarily. You're doing it because she's the only person available on the planet. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's all sorts of ways you can look at it. Like she could be like, you could be much older at that point. Like, and you kind of seen that kind of seems to be like older men, you know, not way older necessarily, but you know what I mean? Like that was kind of the culture that we see come down. So like that kind of makes sense to think, well, one of the first sons is going to like, you know, the parents are going to have like 20, 30, 40, maybe even, who knows, right? We have no idea, but that would make it seem less weird, at least somewhat, but it still seems weird to us. But yeah, like you said, it would make sense. It's just, you got to like not be overly weird about it. I mean, so basically I'm saying, you know, go ahead and sleep with your sister is what I'm saying. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
That's my fault. But, you know, if you're just being honest about it, yeah, that makes sense. I don't, and that's what I think the evidence shows too, that it's really interesting to think like that some of the Bible stories talk about him, you know, just Noah's sons being twins or whatever, triplets or whatever. Like it's interesting. It's interesting to imagine how the different divergence happen in certain, Asian people and, African people and the different attributes. Although there seem to be less when you go in the past, like what do you call those heads of those they find in the woods carved out of rocks? They kind of look half Indian, half African or whatever. You know what I'm talking about? I forget what they call that culture.
Wait, no.
Yeah, I'll think of it later, but I'm going to go to bed, man. Good talking to you. I'll post your channel with the address in the description.
Yeah, man, that's greatly appreciated. Thanks for coming on here, Jamie.
Yeah, right, man. Come visit me sometime. I'll see you later.
Yeah, for sure. All right, night, Jamie. There's 2 theories on the ancient advanced technology. One of them is that the ancients, as we know them, that we're able to uncover archaeologically, that they actually inherited these megalithic structures and these instruments and stuff. Like they inherited them from people who came before them, like from their ancient ancestors. So the ancient ancestors left all of those buildings and stuff behind. And so that's how you could explain that. Another way to explain it is by the global flood. Here's a book by Dr. Walt Brown. It's a PhD in engineering. In the beginning, compelling evidence for creation and the flood. If there was a global flood 4,500 years ago and the population rebooted from 8 people, the leader, the father, is Noah, and he's living to be nearly 600 years old, and he has all the information from his great-great-great-grandparents who lived to be nearly 1,000, you could see how that would develop into the Gilligan's Island theory, where you have very smart people with very little resources, and so they all use what they can in the different geographical locations that they ended up with, which have different materials. Some materials, you're not going to be able to make a hammer out of iron because you don't have an iron deposit which you can mine it out of, in the area that you're living in. So you have to make it out of wood or some other material. So that concludes this after show. Thank you, Iger, for tuning in or for joining. And then Jamie, appreciate you joining as well and sharing my material. I can use all the help that I can get from anybody who's watching this. Like, share, subscribe. And we'll see you again tomorrow on part 2 of the creation seminar, God's creation from a scientific perspective. We're going to be discussing the Nephilim, which I do not believe that fallen angels copulated, with mortal men and produced giants that were like 300 foot tall. I believe in a more reasonable view, which me and Jamie just already described, but just to rehash that a little bit, you just have unsaved individuals getting married to unsaved women who have wicked parents and wicked cultures, and their intention is to produce a civilization of giants which can, fulfill God's original command to take dominion over the earth. They're kind of taking that excessively. So that's my theory on that. And then, of course, the same thing is going to happen after the flood. But because lifespan after the flood, 4,500 years ago, if you don't believe the flood, you need to read this book. You need to at least read it one time, okay, before you just reject the whole thing. It's a compelling theory. It's very well cited, okay, the citations, the references, it's astounding credentials, okay, and peer-reviewed scientific literature, quotations from experts in their relevant fields. There was a flood 4,500 years ago. After that flood, lifespan drops off by half automatically. So before you're living to be nearly 1,000, right after the flood, you're like Noah, who's making it to about 600. And then 500, 1,000 years after the flood, you're only living to be 80 or 90 years old, just like today. So what's happening here is the atmosphere is going to suffer a great injury, at the time of the global flood, and that's going to affect things. And it's going to rapidly decline over a period of, centuries or, you know, a lot of time is going to go by, maybe 1,000 years of the atmosphere steadily declining until it kind of stabilizes, like poking a hole in a barrel full of water. It will leak out until it gets to the point where the hole has been poked, and then it will stop. So it's kind of what the atmosphere, the ozone, the magnetic field, they've declined until they stabilized, and that's what happens. So with the atmosphere in its condition, we're no longer able to live as long as we used to before the flood. And the ancients, in some ways, were even more intelligent than we are today, considering the fact that they have no idea how the ancients, with the tools that they are assuming that the ancients had, were able to construct these megalithic structures without using the tools that are known to be required to make them. We know in order to make, a surface as polished as some of these stone structures are, you have to have machinery. In order to cut into them, you have to have diamond tipped drill bits. So they don't have an explanation for it. They put it on the shelf for future, excavations. And so those are the two theories. Either aliens gave ancients that technology, and then some other people that came along in the future kind of stumbled on these buildings and inherited it and started using them for religious purposes, or there was a global flood 4,500 years ago, and the literal story of Noah's Ark is true. You decide for yourself. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless America. Stay blessed. And I'm out.